the mental transmitter of Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 351 Asteroid Project. Really, Crystal, knowing Alex's tireless efforts for the future of mutants, was delighted to hear this, a bright smile on her face. What is it? Can you tell me? Of course. Alex put Crystal down from her arms and, pulling her along, began to explain the asteroid project proposed by Medusa. Crystal stared at Alex in amazement, sighing deeply after a long moment. That's unbelievable. Yes, it is unbelievable. Alex nodded with a smile, then changed the subject. But it's feasible, and it's fantastic. Crystal nodded, gazing longingly at the outer space. Yes, then mutants will be safe, and you can rest assured too. Alex chuckled, then grew embarrassed again. After a moment's hesitation, he spoke. Crystal, I want to go back now and get started. So, thinking of the asteroid, Alex became increasingly impatient, eager to spread the news and put it into action. Then get back to your work. I'm looking forward to visiting you on your asteroid. Fighting back a wave of sadness, Crystal gently nudged Alex to his feet, a faint smile on her face. After bidding farewell to Crystal, Alex teleported back to Earth's Mystic Valley and telepathically summoned Emma and the others. Soon, Emma, Charles, and other mutant house leaders, filled with confusion, gathered in Alex's room. They exchanged glances, then turned their gazes to Alex. With the continued emergence of superheroes, the situation for mutants will become increasingly difficult. Not everyone wanted to leave Earth, so Alex needed to understand their thoughts. What do you all think we should do from now on? Emma and the others were stunned, staring at Alex in surprise. Superheroes? Keep appearing. I can't explain the details. Just know that mutants must find another way out. Alex couldn't explain clearly. He knew the massive emergence of superheroes was entirely thanks to movies and television. Interrupting everyone's musings on the subject, Alex spoke again, his face serious. Now, everyone, share your thoughts. This valley is pretty good to me. It's nice to stay here. Wolverine Logan, with his feet propped up on the long table, leaned back in his chair, rubbing his still swollen head and complaining loudly. Logan still hadn't regained his memory, but he had accepted the kindness of Alex and the others. As long as Alex didn't try to touch his mind, Logan wouldn't go berserk. Alex looked at Logan with a guilty look on his face, smiled wryly, and shook his head. Although the valley is hidden, it will be discovered by humans sooner or later. It's not safe to stay here any longer. With the ever-increasing human population and the rapid advancement of technology, the space for mutants is becoming increasingly narrow. Charles remained in his wheelchair, a look of distress on his face, his hair thinning considerably. The intense use of telepathy at the Pentagon had taken a toll on Charles's body and mind, not only his hair but also his legs. For unknown reasons, Charles's leg seemed to be his lifeline. Healing his leg would severely diminish his telepathy, perhaps even eliminate it. Ultimately, Charles opted for a wheelchair. Any suggestions, Charles? Alex felt a strange, indescribable feeling as he watched Professor X, gradually transforming into the familiar bald figure he'd always remembered. Charles shook his head, a look of resignation on his face. Unless we have Atlan's technology, we're stuck on Earth. Hearing Charles' words, Alex felt a surge of joy. Turning to look at the others, their distraught expressions only heightened his excitement. It worked. Atlan doesn't have the technology, but we do on asteroids. Alex slowly stood up, scanning the room with a serious expression. Everyone turned to look at Alex, a dozen faces sharing the same expression, surprise tinged with deep confusion. Alex coughed softly, waking everyone up, and began to explain. Is it really possible? Emma's fair face was filled with shock, her eyes brimming with doubt. Alex breathed a sigh of relief and nodded, saying, the practical application won't be a problem. Now we just need to figure out the theory. Alex turned to Charles and asked hopefully, do we have anyone with this talent? Charles was a scientist, though not an expert in astronomy. His initial reaction, like Alex's, was to find it highly unreliable. But then, thinking of Alex's abilities, Charles suddenly felt that an asteroid wasn't out of the question. Alex's voice snapped him out of his thoughts, shook his head, and sighed. Very few mutants study astrophysics. I'm afraid only humans have talent in this area. Humans? Alex frowned, hesitant. Given the relationship between mutants and humans, finding scientists willing to help them was incredibly difficult. Alex couldn't contact Nick Fury again, and finding the right person was even more impossible. Seeing Alex's distressed expression, Charles understood what Alex was worried about. He chuckled and said, "Actually, there's someone who should be willing to help us." "Who?" Alex jerked his head up, looking at Charles with surprise. "Reed Richards." Charles uttered a name, his expression serious. Alex was startled by this and asked uncertainly, "Are you talking about Mr. Fantastic?" Alex vaguely remembered Mr. Fantastic, the leader of the Fantastic Four, as being named that. Charles nodded and explained, "Reed Richards is Earth's greatest scientist of our time. He possesses a genius-level IQ and is proficient in nearly every field of science and technology." He paused, then continued, "He just returned from a space trip not long ago. Before he left, he was just an ordinary person." The Fantastic Four's sudden appearance during the Times Square battle had captured the world's attention. Charles had diligently gathered information and had a general understanding of them. Upon hearing Alex's request, they immediately came to mind. Alex hesitated for a long time, his face became serious, and he said in a deep voice, "Okay, then I'll go see them now." As he spoke, Alex had already stood up from his chair. Before disappearing, he turned to look at Emma and the others, and said with a smile, "Start preparing for the asteroid project immediately. I will come back with good news." Asteroid project, I like this name. Logan landed his feet on the ground, stood up from the chair, jumped a few times, and said excitedly, "If you need me for anything, just tell me, and I guarantee it will be done." Chapter 352 Farewell Fantastic Four. Several hours had passed since the Battle of Times Square, and New York had returned to normal. Workers went to work, beggars went begging, and the Battle of Times Square became little more than a topic of conversation. Returning to New York, Alex suddenly felt as if he were in another world, feeling so out of place in this bustling human city. With a sigh, Alex followed the map Charles had given him, crossing Madison Avenue. At the intersection with 42nd Street, a 35-story building stood on the corner. From here, close to Times Square, he could still see the massive stone sword towering in the center, its black blade emanating a chilling aura. The Fantastic Four had only made one appearance in Times Square, and while it wasn't a successful one, it still garnered worldwide attention. The U.S. government was quick to recruit them, and this building was their gift to the Fantastic Four, and it was also their current residence. "How quick!" Alex exclaimed, Sneer smiled, and vanished from the spot, arriving directly on the 32nd floor of the building. Alex's mind search revealed that the Fantastic Four were all present. Alex's sudden appearance startled Reed and the other two in the room, their faces filled with horror at the intruder. "Don't worry, I mean no harm." Alex raised his hands to signal his intentions. Turning to Reed, he smiled and said, "I'm here to see you, Reed Richards." "What's the matter?" Reed stepped forward, shielding Susan and the other two behind him, and eyed Alex warily. The battle in Times Square, especially Alex's final move, had frightened everyone, even Reed. Alex didn't respond immediately. He turned and surveyed his surroundings, then said, "Wait a moment." As soon as he finished speaking, Alex's body seemed to stretch infinitely, like a slithering snake, darting through the building, seemingly searching for something. In the blink of an eye, Alex was back, armed with numerous bugs and hidden cameras. "What's this?" Johnny pushed Reed aside and walked out. He looked at the object in Alex's hands and was instantly enraged. Alex nodded, saying nothing. With a powerful push of his hand, he shattered the entire object, leaving no trace. "Okay, now we can talk business." Susan glanced at Reed beside her, then reached out to pull Johnny back, her face also filled with anger. Reed didn't say anything, simply glancing at Alex's palm and gesturing to the sofa nearby, motioning for Alex to sit down and talk. "I heard Reed is the greatest scientist on Earth, an astrophysicist." Alex sat down as he was told. He glanced at Susan and the others, then thought for a moment and asked directly, "Do you think an artificial planet is feasible?" Reed suddenly jumped up from the sofa and looked at Alex with confusion, unsure of what Alex meant. As early as 1959, the Soviet Union launched Luna 1, an artificial planet that passed 5,995 kilometers from the moon and had a 450-day orbit. Alex didn't deliberately use telepathy to search Reed's thoughts, but he was still keenly aware that Reed had strayed from his thoughts. He chuckled and added, "A real planet, one with an environment very similar to Earth's, suitable for mutants to live on." "Are you sure?" Reed could hear the goodwill in Alex's words, and his face gradually became serious, his brow furrowed tightly, but secretly he had already begun simulations and calculations. Given the current tense relationship between humans and mutants, Earth no longer has a place for us. We have no choice but to leave. Alex had already seen Red's intentions and was secretly happy, but his face was helpless. So, building an asteroid specifically for mutants, is a very good option. We need your help. Alex's face straightened and he spoke solemnly, his tone sincere and serious. Ben remained silent, merely staring at Alex with a wary gaze. Upon hearing Alex's words, a hint of mockery crossed his stone face. Easier said than done. You think building a planet is that easy? Alex's eyes narrowed slightly, and he turned to look at Ben, speaking in a low voice. What do you think if I say I can do it, just because you say you can? That's ridiculous. Ben waved his fist, his face filled with disdain. So you want to try? Alex was completely enraged by the thing's repeated provocations. Even if it meant angering Reed, Alex was determined to teach him a lesson. As soon as he finished speaking, Alex controlled the magnetic field to suspend the thing in the air. Using his energy control, he dismantled the thing's massive body into pieces of rubble. Then, with a sharp fist, the scattered rubble coalesced into a massive stone ball. With his experience from Times Square, Alex performed his moves with unwavering ease. In the blink of an eye, the roaring stone figure transformed into a stone ball. It wasn't until the ball hit the ground with a thud that Reed and the other two regained their composure, staring at Alex in horror. Johnny was the most direct, raising his hand and unleashing a fireball towards Alex. He himself erupted in flames, seemingly ready to charge. You should take a break too, Alex snorted, ignoring the incoming fireball. Pointing at Johnny with his left hand, the flames emanating from Johnny's body instantly detached, transforming into a flaming cage that trapped him. Johnny himself couldn't even touch the flames, as if he had lost his ability to use them. Seeing Johnny trapped, Susan and Reed finally reacted. Each of them blocked Johnny and Ben, who had turned into a stone ball, behind them, staring at Alex with anger. Mr. Alex, is this your attitude when asking for advice? Alex shrugged and said indifferently, if you guys talk nicely, I'll talk nicely too. If you don't talk nicely, don't blame me for not talking nicely either. Reed Richards is not the only scientist on the Earth. Without Reed Richards, can't Alex find other astrophysicists? I'm sorry, Ben has been a little emotionally unstable because of the sudden change. Susan smiled awkwardly, pointing to the stone ball and explaining, Ben doesn't like the way he is now. Please understand, no mistake in one song, one post, one content, one book, one forum. As Susan finished her words, Reed's voice rang out, you release them. I've already got some preliminary results. Are you serious, Reed? Alex stared at Reed in disbelief. After confirming he wasn't lying, he immediately released Johnny and restored the thing. Looking at the thing, still covered in scars, Alex paused and added, actually, it's easy if you want to recover. I can help you. Are you serious? The thing, still remembering his scars, rushed to Alex's side, excitedly demanding. Alex remained silent, his actions demonstrating his ability. With Alex's abilities, restoring the thing's body was surprisingly easy. Within moments, Ben had regained his normal human form and physique. In exchange, Ben had lost his thing's body and powers. Thank you, Alex. Seeing Ben, tears streaming down his face with excitement, Reed looked at Alex with gratitude and solemnly promised, I'll do my best to help you build an asteroid. Chapter 353 Iron Man. Thank you so much, Alex thanked them quickly, his face brimming with gratitude. Turning to Reed and the other four, he said earnestly, you will receive the most sincere friendship from our mutant family. Johnny snapped his fingers, and a flame ignited between them. He glanced at Alex and said nonchalantly, mutant friendship? I don't think it's going to make any sense, Johnny. Susan glared at Johnny, then turned to Alex, her face apologetic. Alex shrugged, ignoring the defiant young man who had become arrogant after success. He turned to Reed again and said, I'll be waiting for your good news, Reed. Leaving his words behind, Alex teleported out of the Baxter building. After some thought, he didn't immediately return to Mystic Valley, but instead went to Stark Tower, not far from the Baxter building. During the Apocalypse incident, Tony wasn't actually killed by Apocalypse, but managed to survive thanks to his cleverness. Ultimately, after Apocalypse's defeat, he was rescued by SHIELD. Alex had made a point of checking Tony out, not only giving him a full-body checkup but also expending considerable energy to strengthen him once again. Imagine that several months had passed, and Alex decided to visit Tony, his old friend's only remaining son. He headed straight for Tony Stark's office, but he didn't see Tony there. Only Tony's secret to sex, Pepper Potts, was there. "Hello, Mr. Alex." Pepper Potts stood up quickly upon seeing Alex, staring at him in surprise. She stammered, "Mr. Alex, may I ask, what can I do for you?" Alex scanned the building with his telepathic power, finding no sign of Tony. He frowned. "Hello, Ms. Potts, where's Tony?" "Mr. Stark's home, I suppose." Pepper Potts approached cautiously, stopping a dozen steps away from Alex. "Home?" Alex was puzzled, his mind reminiscing about a beachfront villa in the Iron Man movies. Pepper nodded again, then whispered with a look of resignation, "Mr. Stark hasn't been to the company in a long time. All company affairs have been handed over to CEO Obadiah Stane." Alex subconsciously wondered if Tony was working on his Iron Man armor. After all, this world was different from the Iron Man movie universe. Perhaps, inspired by Apocalypse, Tony had tinkered with the Iron Man armor first. "Keep an eye on the company, Pepper," Alex said, teleporting out of Stark Tower and directly to Tony Stark's beachfront villa. What infuriated Alex was that Tony wasn't working on the Iron Man armor, he was actually having a strip party in the villa. Sleek beauties of all kinds came and went, and Tony, lost in the whirlwind of them, was drunk and lost in his drink. "That's ridiculous," Alex yelled, annoyed, and threw all the naked women out of the villa, leaving Tony, devastated, slumped on the sofa. Tony rolled his drunken eyes, carefully identifying the man before him. After a long pause, he chuckled, "Alex, you're Alex, right?" Without waiting for Alex to reply, he muttered to himself, "I know you. My dad's good friend, a mutant with extraordinary powers." "Tony, what's wrong with you?" Alex looked Tony up and down, unable to imagine the drunken man before him could be the handsome playboy from the movies. Tony reached for a bottle of wine, gulped down half a bottle, and laughed heartily, saying, "Enjoy life while you can, enjoy life while you can." Alex snatched the bottle from Tony's hand, staring into Tony's hazy eyes, using his telepathy to probe Tony's mind. It was obvious that something was wrong with Tony, and even asking questions wouldn't reveal anything. Alex had no choice but to do this. Alex paused his telepathy and, looking at Tony, who had fallen into deep sleep, grumbled, "How fragile." In the Iron Man films, Tony Stark, feeling his time was running out due to the toxins in the battery, indulged himself. Alex could understand that, but now Tony, simply because he had witnessed the immense power of Apocalypse and had been baptized by various superpowers, felt insignificant and helpless, leading him to this decadent indulgence. What should I do? Apocalypse's influence was too profound, and Alex couldn't change Tony's heart. If he allowed Tony to continue this downward spiral, he might die before his father. After much thought, Alex realized that the only way to free Tony from Apocalypse's influence was to instill confidence in him, in other words, to empower him with powerful abilities. Only then could Tony escape Apocalypse's influence. Well, the Fantastic Four have appeared, and Iron Man wouldn't be bad. With a dry laugh, Alex left a mark in Tony's memory, a reference to the Iron Man suit. This was just a starting point, giving Tony an idea. Alex wouldn't have to worry about the rest of the development. After leaving his mark, Alex prepared to leave. But then a sudden thought struck him, the Iron Man armor's energy source, a problem that had long troubled Tony Stark. Ultimately, it was the information left by Howard Stark that inspired him to develop a new element, ultimately ridding Tony Stark of the toxins in the arc reactor. Never mind, I'll see. Alex turned around, tampered with Tony's memory once more, and finally left, satisfied. After leaving New York, Alex returned to the Mystic Valley, notifying Charles to contact Reed at all times, and then departed once more for space. Before Reed could lay out the theoretical foundations, Alex decided to act first, exploring space and making detailed preparations, such as collecting cosmic dust and star fragments. After all, the materials required to construct an asteroid were immense, and it wouldn't be possible to gather them overnight. While Alex was busy in space, Tony Stark also woke up from his hangover. Rubbing his eyes and sitting up, Tony looked around with a puzzled look on his face, muttering uncertainly, "I remember that Alex seemed to be here." As soon as he thought of Alex, Tony suddenly realized something else in his mind, a scene of the Iron Man in battle. What is this? Tony stood up suddenly, but due to the long period of depression, Tony was very weak. He felt dizzy and sat back down, his face full of disbelief. Shaking his head violently, Tony finally confirmed that the scene in his mind was not an illusion. He was real. Tony's first thought was Alex, and he muttered something under his breath, not knowing whether it was a complaint or gratitude. I'm afraid only he can have such a power. Iron Man, how cool. Tony stood up again, a confident smile spreading across his scruffy face, his cloudy eyes shining. Chapter 354 Doctor Doom. New York, Baxter Building. After seeing Alex off, Reed didn't immediately return to his asteroid research. Instead, he circled around Ben, who had regained his human body, a look of curiosity on his face. Reed, you've been staring at me for almost half an hour, Ben, unable to bear Reed's gaze, complained loudly. I can't believe he just waved his hand and you're back to normal, Reed exclaimed in amazement, unable to resist reaching out to touch Ben's arm, his face filled with disbelief. Originally, I was thinking of reversing the cosmic energy rays, so we might be able to return to normal, but it's just a possibility, Reed emphasized this point, becoming increasingly excited. But, he just waved his hand. This is unbelievable, Reed exclaimed again. Johnny rolled his eyes and said, you guys keep talking. I'm going out for some fresh air. Johnny, where are you going? Susan quickly stopped him, seeing him trying to leave. It's not appropriate for us to stay out here right now. It's too dangerous, for you and for everyone else. Okay, I promise I won't cause any trouble. Johnny raised his hand, looking at Johnny with a look of resignation. Reed, now recovered from his surprise at Alex, looked at Johnny seriously. Johnny, I think we'd better stay here. Don't go anywhere. He paused slightly, then lowered his voice. Don't forget, we're being watched. They can't catch me. Johnny shrugged nonchalantly, a wicked smile on his face. Without waiting for Red to say anything, he pushed the door open and walked out. Susan glanced at Reed apologetically and chased after him. Don't bother you. I should get home too. Ben straightened his loose clothes, a smile spreading across his face, and ran out impatiently. Seeing his room suddenly empty, Reed's face was filled with bitterness. Fine, I'll take care of myself. Meanwhile, several blocks away in another building, Victor Doom looked down at his gradually metallizing arm, his stern face expressionless. On the giant screen before him, the scene of Alex appearing in the Baxter Building played until the image faded to a snowflake and then repeated. Victor Doom, the future Doctor Doom, had once funded and accompanied Mr. Fantastic Reed on his space expeditions to study cosmic energy radiation. When the Fantastic Four gradually developed superpowers, Victor Doom also mutated. The Fantastic Four forgot about Victor Doom, and so did Alex, due to his poor performance in the movies. Alex, Victor muttered softly, slowly extending his right hand. The giant screen before him suddenly erupted in countless sparks, crackling and then completely obliterated. A moment later, Victor arrived at the Baxter Building, cloaked in his cape. Victor, what are you doing here? Reed, busy calculating the asteroid's orbit, was surprised to see Victor's sudden arrival. He was even more astonished when he saw Victor remove his mask. Victor, you too. Beneath Victor's mask, half his face had turned to metal, giving him a terrifying appearance. Victor looked around in wonder, then asked, somewhat startled, where are they? They're all gone. Up, they're all out, Reed replied casually, observing Victor, his mind once again captivated by Victor's transformation. Ben's out too. Victor looked at Reed in astonishment, pointing to his own face in disbelief. He's not supposed to be out in the open like this. At this, Reed excitedly explained, Victor, Ben's back to normal. Back to normal? How could that be possible? Victor couldn't help but exclaim. This time, he wasn't acting, he was genuinely frightened. Reed didn't hold back, briefly explaining Alex's abilities and his original plan. Actually, I was planning to simulate cosmic energy radiation and then reverse it, so we could potentially return to normal. Reed gave an awkward laugh and added, of course, I'm not sure about the results. It could be worse? Well, I don't know, Reed said with a wry smile, shaking his head. It could worsen our situation, or there could be other dangers. I don't know. Victor had come to the Baxter Building hoping to contact Alex, but he had unexpectedly received such a pleasant surprise. He was overjoyed. Can you show me? Having witnessed Alex's power during the Battle of Times Square and having mutated himself due to the cosmic energy radiation, Victor wanted to become even stronger. which was why he wanted to contact Alex. Now that he had another method, Victor was eager to try it. Reed, unaware of Victor's thoughts, pulled out his design drawings without further consideration and explained them to Victor in detail. Watching Victor prepare to leave with his blueprints, Reed paused, stopping him and suggesting, "Victor, if you want to recover, I can help you contact Alex." "Thank you, Reed," Victor said, turning and leaving without specifying his intentions. Seeing his room once again to himself, Reed smiled wryly and shook his head, burying himself in the tedious research. Meanwhile, after receiving Reed's blueprints, Victor eagerly returned to his company and immediately began construction. Within half a day, the blueprints had become a physical object, naturally modified by Victor. Instead of reversing, they only intensified, a heightened version of cosmic energy rays. After sending all the staff out, Victor entered the mechanical compartment where the instrument was connected. Taking a deep breath, Victor whispered a prayer, "Bless Latvia." With that prayer, Victor resolutely started the machine. The machine began to spin rapidly, and the lights in the lab began to flicker violently, a sign of unstable voltage. Not enough energy. Victor realized the machine wasn't getting enough energy, and he quickly channeled his energy into it, sending countless arcs of electricity whirling through it. The entire process lasted several minutes, and eventually the entire lab went completely dark. The hastily completed machine was scrapped, and the experiment seemed to have failed. At that moment, the mechanical chamber enclosing Victor suddenly opened, and amidst puffs of thick smoke, Victor emerged with a cruel sneer on his face. "Now, I am Dr. Doom." Victor slowly raised his right hand, and the mechanical chamber behind him began to creak, as if being grasped by a giant hand and crushed into a ball. Chapter 355 Fantastic Four vs. Dr. Doom. Feeling the overwhelming power within him, Victor felt like a god, capable of devastating the world with a single wave of his hand. Victor was entranced by the vortex of power. "I need more." With Victor's cry, all the instruments in the laboratory began to vibrate violently, finally being destroyed in a shower of sparks. After a moment, the laboratory returned to calm, and Victor rose from the rubble. His face had been completely metallized, resembling a half-human, half-machine monster. After creating a mask for himself, Victor donned a cape and strolled out of the lab. At a stunt show in downtown New York City, Johnny pushed his way through the crowd to the sidelines. Watching the car stunts, his blood boiled with the urge to try them out. No need to think, Johnny, as her own brother, Susan knew Johnny well enough to guess his intentions from a single expression. Johnny rolled his eyes, appearing to accept the situation with resignation, but secretly plotting how he would sneak onto the stage later. At that moment, the giant screen on the field suddenly flashed a news report: "Major power outage in Manhattan, lasting nearly 10 minutes. The exact cause is still under investigation." Could it be Reed? Johnny's eyes raced, an idea forming in his mind, his face filled with hesitation. That machine he designed requires a lot of energy. Hearing that Reed might be involved, Susan couldn't sit still. She stood up and ran outside, but within a few steps, she vanished. Watching Susan leave, Johnny laughed heartily, immediately stripped off his leather jacket, and dashed onto the field, grabbing a motorcycle and engaging in stunts. Johnny was quite courageous, but his skills were lacking. He barely managed a 360-degree turn in the air, then separated from the motorcycle and fell to the ground like a kite with a broken string. In this critical moment, Johnny, without a care in the world, transformed into the Human Torch. Golden flames brushed the ground, carrying Johnny up into the air. But Johnny's move was a blessing in disguise, earning the crowd's screams. While Johnny was lost in the fans' excitement and Susan vanished into thin air, hurrying towards the Baxter building, Victor, transformed into Dr. Doom, arrived at Reed's lab again. "Excuse me, who are you?" Reed's thoughts were interrupted once again, his tone a bit stiff. But once he saw the person before him, Reed's nerves returned, and he regarded the newcomer with wariness. The newcomer wore a cape and a metal mask, looking quite strange. "Reed, it's only been a short time, and you don't recognize me." Victor, making no effort to conceal his identity, sarcastically smirked. "Victor." Reed stared at Victor in surprise, a touch of disbelief. "What happened? How did you become like this?" Half a day ago, only half of Victor's face had transformed into metal. Now, almost his entire body had become a metallic monster. "I think this is good. I feel full of power." Victor's voice, muffled through the mask, carried a chilling, eerie quality. "What are you trying to do, Victor?" Reed shouted, his guard growing ever more alert. Victor's malicious intent was clear. Victor laughed wildly, pointed at Reed, and shouted with a frenzied expression, "I need your strength." Before Reed could react, Victor had already struck. A bolt of lightning shot out from Victor's palm, a bolt as thick as his arm, streaking through the air and striking Reed in the chest in an instant. Reed's rubbery body made him immune to most physical attacks, but not to electricity. The numbing effect of the current caused Reed's body to tremble violently, and his hair transformed into a stylish afro. "Good job. Want to try again?" Victor chuckled and unleashed another bolt of lightning. A surge of electricity coursed through Reed's body, stimulating him continuously. Reed tried to fight back, but the paralyzing effect of the current made it impossible for him to concentrate. Instead, his head grew increasingly dizzy, and he eventually fell into deep sleep. After a long journey, Susan finally returned to the Baxter building, only to find the ground covered in rubble. What happened? Susan looked around in panic, but she couldn't see Reed. Just then, Ben rushed back, glanced around the dilapidated lab, then turned to Susan. "What happened? Where's Reed?" "I don't know. I can't find Reed." Susan turned to Ben, trying to calm herself, shaking her head and explaining, "I just got back too. I don't know what happened here." The two exchanged glances before entering the lab and beginning a careful search. A note taped to the wall caught Susan and Ben's attention. It contained only a single name, Victor Doom. "That guy." Ben rolled his eyes in disdain at the thought of Victor Doom. Susan was startled for a moment, then a sudden thought struck her. She looked at Ben in astonishment. "Ben, Victor was with us on the previous space program, wasn't he?" "Well, yes, actually, he's the one who funded the whole project." "A rich guy," Ben replied subconsciously, about to say something sarcastic when he suddenly realized it, his face filled with shock. "You mean, he's mutated too?" "Of course." Susan nodded confidently, then hurriedly turned and rushed outside. "No, I have to go save Reed. I'll go with you." Ben followed without hesitation, asking confusedly as he ran. "By the way, what did Victor want to do with Reed?" "Ben, don't go." Susan refused Ben's suggestion without answering Ben's question, and quickly ran out of the lab. Ben was about to follow, but then he realized that Victor might also have superpowers. As an ordinary person, he wouldn't be of any use if he went there, and would only be a burden. Thinking of this, Ben suddenly regretted letting Alex heal him. Compared to one's appearance and body, isn't it more important to have the power to protect the people you want to protect? Yes, find Alex. After figuring it out, Ben immediately wanted to restore the Stone Man's power. But how could he contact Alex at this time? In fact, Alex didn't leave any contact information before he left. Just when Ben was desperate, he suddenly saw a half-finished machine in the corner of his eye. It looked like the machine that Reed had designed to reverse cosmic energy rays. "Got it." With uncontrollable surprise, Ben quickly rushed forward and got into the machine, and started it without thinking. 3 minutes later, accompanied by puffs of thick smoke, the machine opened, and Ben, who had turned into a stone man again, walked out. Chapter 356 Fantastic Four vs. Dr. Doom, Part 2. As Ben transformed back into the Thing, Alex, far away in space, suddenly sensed something and felt his body tremble inexplicably. "What's going on?" Alex paused his work to examine himself. At Alex's level of strength, he was aware of every subtle change in his body. But Alex hadn't sensed the momentary tremor. This was definitely unusual. After a long examination, Alex finally found the source, the mutant energy extracted from the Thing. The cosmic rays encountered by the Fantastic Four in space were actually a form of mutant energy, similar to the mutant energy of Terrigon's mist. It was this mutant energy that gave rise to the Fantastic Four's unique superpowers. No mutation occurs overnight. The mutant energy that drives the mutation remains dormant in the body until it is fully absorbed. Having just returned from space, the Fantastic Four hadn't had time to fully absorb the cosmic mutant energy. This is why Alex healed the Thing with a wave of his hand, directly extracting the mutant energy within it. Without the influence of the mutant energy, the Thing would naturally return to normal. But now, the Thing's mutant energy was fluctuating, clearly indicating danger. And if the Thing was in danger, the rest of the Fantastic Four, as a family, were likely to be in danger too. With this in mind, Alex quickly finished his work and teleported back to Earth, arriving directly at the Baxter building in New York. As Alex had expected, Reed's laboratory was in ruins. Could it be the Silver Surfer? Or that Galactus, who was just a black hole, Alex had been pondering the Fantastic Four's opponents. Based on the plots of the two films, Alex had finally zeroed in on these two, leaving Doctor Doom, who had been forgotten in Java. As his thoughts wandered, Alex carefully sensed the Thing's location. Because he possessed the Thing's mutant energy, Alex could easily locate him. Just then, Johnny, engulfed in flames, melted through the glass and flew in from outside the building. "Why are you here?" Johnny's smug smile faded upon seeing Alex, and he surveyed his surroundings warily. "What happened here? Did you do all this?" Alex ignored Johnny's barrage of questions and turned to leave. Unfortunately, Johnny wasn't about to let Alex go. With a furious roar, he transformed into the Human Torch and charged, his blazing flames seemingly setting the very air ablaze. "Get out!" Alex snorted, dispelling the flames from Johnny. He grabbed Johnny by the neck and lifted him into the air. "Use your brain, Johnny!" Johnny, startled by Alex's bare hands, broke into cold sweat, but then he reacted quickly. Alex needed Reed's help, so he shouldn't be causing trouble. Furthermore, with Alex's strength, even the combined forces of the four of them would be no match for him. "Got it," Alex scoffed at Johnny, who seemed to have finally grasped the situation. He let go of him, flew through the glass Johnny had melted through, and flew out. "If you want to find your sister and the others, follow me." Alex had already located the Thing when Johnny appeared. But to Alex's surprise, the area was shielded, making teleportation impossible. Alex had no choice but to fly over, though the distance was not far. "This is Doom's company." Seeing the building not far away, Johnny approached Alex and explained carefully, "He funded our space program." Back then, he and we, Johnny froze mid-sentence, and cursed, "Oh, shit, Doom? Victor Doom." Hearing Doom's familiar name, memories of Doctor Doom flooded Alex's mind. After cursing, Johnny recovered and nodded quickly at Alex's question. "Yes, do you know him too?" Alex was momentarily overwhelmed, ultimately consoling himself by saying, "This isn't the movie world." As Alex and Johnny approached the building, two figures leaped from the rooftop. One was Ben, transformed back into the Thing, and the other was presumably Doctor Doom. Passing over the Thing, Alex's attention was fixed on Doctor Doom. "Huh?" After observing for a moment, Alex couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, staring at Doctor Doom in disbelief. Alex hadn't expected that Doctor Doom's mutated power wasn't the electric current control seen in the movies, but rather a more advanced form of electromagnetism, remarkably similar to Magneto's magnetic field control. When Alex regained consciousness, the Thing had already landed on the ground, carrying Doctor Doom, and had, as luck would have it, crashed into a garbage truck. "Go help, I'll go check on Reed," Alex said, turning to Johnny and flying straight into the building, noticing the crowd gathering on the ground. A perfect poem, a perfect post, a perfect content, a perfect book. Reed's body was covered in frost, frozen in a freezer, rubber hardens in the cold, losing its elasticity. Elsewhere, Susan was tangled in a tangle of wires, arcs flickering constantly, and she remained unable to wake. "Thank you, Alex." Relieved, Reed supported the limp Susan and looked at Alex with gratitude. "Nothing, just a matter of convenience," Alex replied casually, then turned to inquire about Doctor Doom. "By the way, why did Doctor Doom capture you? And how is he so powerful?" "Victor wanted to absorb the cosmic energy from us to increase his own strength." Reed coughed lightly, his expression slightly embarrassed. "Doctor Doom used the cosmic energy reversal device I designed earlier to enhance his own mutation, which is why he's so powerful." "I see." Alex suddenly understood, and his curiosity about Doctor Doom's mutant energy grew even more intense. Just as he was thinking, Reed's voice sounded in his ears again. "Alex, can you help subdue Victor? Ben and Johnny are probably no match for him." Alex came back to his senses upon hearing the voice, and shook his head to refuse without hesitation. "My current identity is not suitable for me to show up." Without waiting for the two to be disappointed, he added, "But I can stimulate the mutant energy in your bodies, so that you can easily defeat him." Mutant energy. Reed is worthy of being a scientific researcher. He always maintains a strong desire for knowledge. He looks at Alex with curiosity on his face, and even forgets the battle that is about to happen. Alex looked at Reed with a helpless look on his face. "Let's talk about this later. You should solve the trouble in front of you first." As he spoke, Alex had already taken action. Chapter 357 Fantastic Four vs. Doctor Doom, Part 2. The mutant energy generated by cosmic rays remained within Reed and Susan, slowly transforming them through constant radiation. Alex's only job was to stimulate and amplify the radiation, thereby enhancing Reed and Susan's abilities. This was simple enough for Alex. Alright, after a brief stimulation, Alex immediately withdrew. Forcing things to happen wasn't the right approach. Reed and Susan exchanged doubtful glances at Alex, feeling no physical changes. You only have the potential for enhancement now. Only through combat can you truly unleash your abilities, Alex, noticing their hesitation, explained with a chuckle, then urged, hurry down. The Human Torch and the Thing are almost collapsing. Hearing Alex's words, Reed and Susan looked down at the street outside the building. Under Victor's powerful abilities, Johnny and Ben could only passively take the beating, unable to mount even a single decent attack. The Thing tried to charge at Victor, but before he could even get close, Victor's punch knocked him to the ground, leaving a deep gullet in the ground before he came to rest. Johnny tried to rush forward to rescue him, carefully unleashing a fireball that struck Victor accurately, but it had no effect, only burning Victor's coat. Effortlessly neutralizing the attacks of the Human Torch and the Thing, Victor sneered and ripped out a lamppost, transforming it into a metal spear, stabbing the Thing's chest as it lay prone, unable to rise. Without a moment's hesitation, Reed wrapped his right hand around Susan and leaped from the building, landing in the blink of an eye, his left hand still clinging to the wall. Meanwhile, Susan had already intervened, using her invisible force field to block Victor's spear. Sister, are you alright? Johnny turned to look at Reed and Susan, his face filled with concern. Just now, outside the building, Johnny hadn't had time to observe the situation inside before Alex ordered him to cooperate with Ben in dealing with Victor. He had no idea what was happening between them. Susan shook her head to indicate she was fine, taking the opportunity to glance around, her expression grave. Although Doom Corp wasn't located in the heart of Times Square, it was still a thriving human community. It was nighttime, and the crowds were even thicker. Of course, most people stayed away once the battle began, but a few fearless individuals still lingered. A clash between multiple individuals could easily lead to the loss of innocent lives, which was why the Human Torch hesitated to unleash his full power, unable to even unleash a single fireball. Control the battlefield, Reed, realizing the problem, commanded Susan, and charged at Victor. In mid-air, Reed's body transforming into a massive canopy that descended from the sky, covering Victor. Then, spinning rapidly, Victor was completely engulfed, unable to move. Following Reed's attack, Susan followed suit, creating an invisible force field that separated the battlefield from the surrounding crowd, ensuring the battle would not spread beyond the area. The Fantastic Four, having spent years together, possessed a rapport. Upon witnessing Reed and Susan's actions, the Human Torch reacted instantly, unleashing his full power and rapidly spinning around Victor's body, unleashing a massive tornado of fire. The orange-yellow flames shone faintly white. The tornado's heat was so intense that it melted everything it touched. Like lava from a volcanic eruption, transforming the entire battlefield into a molten inferno. Fortunately, Susan's invisible force field was powerful enough to confine the tornado to a narrow area. Had it spread, the entirety of Times Square would have been reduced to ash. Johnny's body temperature at that moment was a staggering 4,000 to 5,000 degrees Celsius, comparable to the surface of the sun. The tornado of fire lasted for nearly 5 minutes before Johnny collapsed to the ground, exhausted. As Johnny fell, the tornado dissipated after only a few seconds, revealing Victor in the center. As for Reed, he had already leaped to the perimeter before Johnny could reach him. Victor's entire body was now ablaze, like wrought iron pulled from a furnace, radiating a fiery crimson. Victor slowly raised his hand, turned his head to look at Reed and the other three, and said with disdain, "Is this all you can do? This little bit of heat can't do anything to me. Your turn is in elementary chemistry class. What happens when you rapidly cool hot metal?" Reed smiled calmly and turned to the stone figure beside him. Ben, the stone figure understood and kicked a street-side fire hydrant, sending a column of water shooting up over 10 meters into the air. The stone figure raised his foot to block the outlet, causing the water column to redirect and sweep straight towards the crimson-skinned Victor. As the steam gushed out, Victor's body began to change color rapidly, as if quenched by fire. However, the dense vapor made it impossible for outsiders to see what was happening inside. Atop the building, Alex had been keeping an eye on the battlefield. The scene of the Fantastic Four fighting Dr. Doom struck him as incredibly familiar. Upon closer inspection, it was almost identical to the movie scene. However, Dr. Doom had become significantly stronger, his control over electrical currents now electromagnetic. Defeat with these meager tactics was impossible. Frowning slightly, Alex's eyes pierced through the layers of vapor to reveal Victor at the center. As Alex had expected, Victor didn't transform into a metal statue as in the movie. Instead, he used the swirling vapor to stealthily approach the Fantastic Four, clearly aiming for a surprise ambush. "Be careful," Alex warned the Fantastic Four telepathically before they could say anything more. Reed and the other four were startled by Alex's voice in their heads. Before they could react, a figure burst forth from the vapor, a bolt of electricity as thick as an arm piercing Susan with undisguised murderous intent. Susan had expended so much energy using her invisible force field to control the battlefield. Her face was pale, and blood was flowing from her mouth and nose. Her condition was even worse than that of the exhausted Johnny. Seeing Victor's sudden attack, Susan tried to use her invisible force field to defend herself, but the field, which should have formed in an instant, was still not forming. "No," Reed screamed, flinging his arm out, trying to bring Susan with him, but unfortunately, his speed was still too slow. Johnny, exerting his last bit of strength, managed to ignite a flame and fly, but his speed was even slower than Reed's extended arm. Ben also ran over, roaring. He was closest to Susan, but he was also the slowest. As Susan was about to be killed by Victor, a sudden flash of black light appeared, and the electric current attacking Susan mysteriously disappeared. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 358, Dr. Doom's Tragedy. For a moment, everyone in the room was stunned, from Susan and Victor, the victims, to Reed and the other two, who hadn't noticed yet. What just happened? Victor was the most confused, his voice tinged with uncontrollable fear. The current that had struck Susan was fueled by Victor's internal energy, remaining connected to his palm. But just as the current faded, Victor felt a startling suction, madly devouring his own energy. Reed and the other two finally gathered around Susan, firmly protecting her behind them. Alex's image flashed through their minds. They were certain the shadowy figure was Alex. Mr. Alex, please help subdue Victor. After witnessing Alex's uncanny strength, Reed pleaded again, speaking in his mind. From the previous battle, Reed had discovered that his abilities were indeed growing, just as Alex had predicted. If he continued this way, he had a good chance of defeating Victor. But the situation didn't allow Red to waste any more time. Who knew if he would cause even greater damage? After much deliberation, Reed could only turn to Alex for help. Alex, hidden in the shadows, overheard Reed's thoughts. After some thought, he chose not to refuse outright. "You guys fight him for a while. I'll take action when the time is right." Reed was completely baffled by Alex's intentions. With the abilities Alex had displayed, he had taken down Victor completely unnoticed. "You and the Invisible Woman go first. I'll give the Human Torch and the Thing a try." Before Reed could speak again, Alex spoke up, blocking Reed's mouth. Hearing Alex's words, Reed was stunned at first, then realized that Alex was planning to combine Victor with the other four to hone their skills. This thought made Reed even more grateful to Alex. Without a word, he called Susan and rushed towards Victor again. At this moment, Victor also had a vague sense of something, and his thoughts weakened. He only wanted to escape as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, with Susan's strong control and Reed's constant attempts to stop him, Victor was unable to escape. While Reed and the other two engaged in a fierce struggle, Alex secretly began stimulating Johnny's mutant energy. A few seconds passed, and Johnny didn't even react. Following Reed and Susan, he charged towards Victor. The Thing presented a more complex situation. Alex had separated the mutant energy from the Thing, making it difficult to merge it with the Thing. Furthermore, the Thing already contained a new mutant energy, generated by simulating cosmic rays. While the two mutant energies appeared similar, they were fundamentally different. Simply put, one was genuine, the other a knockoff. After tinkering with the Thing for over a minute, Alex managed to integrate the genuine mutant energy into the Thing, keeping it separate from the knockoff. After stimulating the Thing's mutant energy again, Alex turned his attention to Dr. Doom. With the Thing's precedent, Alex became increasingly curious about the situation within Dr. Doom. What was the true nature of the Thing and the knockoff within him? Even with the Thing joining the fray, the tide of battle still didn't turn in the Fantastic Four's favor. To put it bluntly, the Fantastic Four's abilities were only marginally adequate, limited to those of the Thing and the Human Torch. They were somewhat effective against minor opponents, but facing the electromagnetic powers of Doctor Doom, they were completely useless, as they had no means of restraining them. Having spent so many years in the Marvel Universe, Alex had come to understand that strength lies not on the power of one's abilities, but in the ability to control them. Without this ability, victory would be extremely difficult unless one possessed overwhelming power. Alex's mind wandered to the heavens. On the battlefield, the battle intensified. The Human Torch had already unleashed his most powerful supernova power several times in a row. Unfortunately, he still couldn't defeat Doctor Doom. "Alex, please, attack." Seeing the battle stalling, Reed spoke to Alex again, though still inwardly. This time, Alex didn't refuse, nodding his head in agreement. "You guys keep fighting, I'll attack from behind." "Thank you." Reed quickly expressed his gratitude upon hearing Alex's words. Alex's move clearly meant to take credit for the Fantastic Four's success, a move that would be their future asset. Subduing Doctor Doom would be easy for Alex, but to avoid attracting the attention of certain departments, Alex had to conceal his abilities as best he could. Otherwise, if discovered, neither he nor the Fantastic Four would be safe. The key to defeating Doctor Doom was to contain his electromagnetic abilities. These electromagnetic fields could generate a special magnetic field, powerful in both combat and defense. It was this ability that had helped him avoid being hardened into a metal statue. The best way to counter a field was to use it. Among those present, Susan happened to possess a field, a cloaking force field, a special kind of gravitational field. However, Susan's abilities were limited, and her cloaking force field was no match for Doctor Doom's electromagnetic field. Alex's priority now was to enhance Susan's strength. Activating her mutant abilities was definitely too late, so he could only transfer his own energy to Susan, using her to unleash a cloaking force field. After informing her of his plan and receiving her approval, Alex's immense energy quietly flowed into her body, strengthening the cloaking force field that had enveloped Doctor Doom. Go ahead. Just like before, without his electromagnetic field, Doctor Doom looked much like he did in the movie. Alex, not wanting to consider other options, simply instructed Reed and the others to follow their traditional methods. Before studying Doctor Doom, Alex hadn't intended to kill him outright. The same battle unfolded, yet the two outcomes were completely different, leaving the onlookers baffled. Reed, Johnny, and Ben were equally perplexed. They all knew Alex was behind the scenes, but they didn't know what. Doctor Doom had just been trapped when the police arrived. Several of them were clearly not police officers, but rather members of a special unit. Alex sneered and quietly approached Doctor Doom, carefully examining his body. "Who are you?" Doctor Doom couldn't see Alex, but he could clearly sense his body being examined. Alex chuckled but didn't respond. He was secretly astonished. Doctor Doom had no counterfeit mutant energy in him, as the counterfeit mutant energy had been directly mixed with the genuine mutant energy, the two blending perfectly. Chapter 359 Restarting the Super Soldier Project. Doctor Doom was stunned at first when he didn't receive a response, but then suddenly realized, "You're Alex, you're quite clever." Alex, surprised that Doctor Doom had guessed him, looked at him with some surprise. Doctor Doom's heart skipped a beat at this, a wave of fear trembling in his throat. "What do you want?" Alex's power was beyond Doctor Doom's imagination, and he wouldn't dare provoke him, at least not yet. "Nothing, I just want to take something from you," Alex said slowly, raising one hand. Strands of energy emanated from Doctor Doom's body, eventually converging into a surging ball of energy. The fiery red energy resembled the legendary Phoenix. Doctor Doom, terrified, pleaded for mercy. "Please, don't do this. I promise I won't do anything bad again." With no sign of Alex's relenting pleas, his expression darkened and he cursed furiously. "This is my power. You can't do this." "Sorry," he said without emotion. Alex suddenly exerted his strength, and the last traces of energy in Doctor Doom merged into the ball. Without his mutant energy, Doctor Doom suddenly weakened. His face was pale, and his eyes were hollow, as if he had lost all life. Seeing Doctor Doom like this, Alex felt a sudden pang of sympathy. After a moment's thought, he spoke to him. "Just stay alive. With your intelligence, that's not a problem." He turned and walked away. After a few steps, he turned back to Doctor Doom and added, "Actually, Being an ordinary person is pretty good. As the steam cleared, Alex quietly left. An hour later, at the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Four returned, exhausted, their expressions grim. What happened? Alex, who was sitting on the sofa sipping a drink, turned to look at the four. Reed and the other three were startled at the sight of Alex, then relaxed. Johnny spoke first, his face filled with indignation. Victor's been taken away, and they're asking us to cooperate with the investigation. Cooperate with the investigation. Alex paused, scoffing, and setting down his glass. They want to use you for research, right? Reed nodded bitterly, his tone firm. Yes, they do, but we won't let them succeed. He paused, a hint of relief in his voice. Luckily, they don't know about that machine. Don't worry, the mutant energy it generates can only affect you. After an hour of meticulous study, Alex had discovered the fatal flaw of the knockoff. Without the original, it would be like floating duckweed without roots, and wouldn't last long. Reed stared at Alex in astonishment, his eyes filled with confusion. Alex briefly explained a few things and then turned to inquiring about the asteroid project. It's actually being simulated, Reed said confidently, pointing toward the lab. I'm sure we'll have results in a few days. Alex shrugged, pointing back toward the lab, and said resignedly, I have to warn you, the lab is a mess right now. Your simulation may be scrapped. Reed froze, then dashed into the lab. He saw a shambles of ruin, not a single machine in good condition. Alex stood up and said calmly, Don't worry, I'll be waiting. As he spoke, Alex had vanished from the Baxter Building, reappearing at Nick Fury's home. Because his relationship with humans had become strained, Alex couldn't appear at SHIELD, so he came to Nick Fury's house, even though it was still technically part of SHIELD. He waited for an unknown amount of time, but just as Alex was about to drift off to sleep, he finally heard Nick Fury's footsteps. Nick Fury, a super spy with a wartime background, noticed a change immediately and slowed his pace, as if preparing something. Alex, sitting on the sofa, heard the change in Nick Fury's pace and chuckled softly. Telepathically, a voice registered in Nick Fury's mind. Nick, it's me, outside. Nick Fury relaxed, a smile playing on his lips. A few minutes later, Nick Fury and Alex sat across from each other, each clutching a can of beer, sipping from it. Why are you here? Nick Fury glanced at Alex, surprised. If you need anything, just come to me. Alex smiled gently and explained softly. It's been a while, I came to see you. He chuckled again and added, by the way, I have a question for you. It's confidential. Ask anything. I promise I'll tell you everything I know. Nick Fury laughed back, using an idiom. What are humans doing now? Alex was convinced that humans would definitely take action, but he knew nothing about it. He was really worried, so he went to Nick Fury. No mistake. Ever since their complete break with humanity, the House of Mutants has received almost no news from humans. The House of Mutants did establish an intelligence network in the past, but with the mutant detectors invented by humans, the mutants would be exposed at the slightest mistake, making it impossible for them to penetrate the core of humanity and naturally lose access to important information. Nick Fury hesitated when he heard this, his face full of hesitation. What's wrong? Alex frowned, looking at Nick Fury in surprise. Alex knew that humans would definitely take action, but he didn't believe that humans could truly threaten mutants, otherwise he wouldn't have thought of asking Nick Fury until today. Nick Fury sighed and said gravely, I only stumbled upon this news a few days ago. They've been working on the Super Soldier Project. What? The Super Soldier Project? Alex stood up abruptly, staring at Nick Fury in disbelief. The Super Soldier Project held special meaning for Alex. It was here that Alex met the affable Dr. Abraham. It was here that Steve began his journey to become Captain America. It was here that Alex truly integrated into this new and strange world of Marvel. Yes, through Steve and your serum, we can infer Dr. Abraham's super soldier serum, Nick Fury explained expressionlessly, his voice slightly low. Unfortunately, decades have passed, and they haven't made any progress until recently. What? My serum? Alex exclaimed again, not even able to hear what was said next. After Dr. Abraham was murdered, samples of your and Steve's serum were kept. Nick Fury knew what Alex was worried about, and chuckled to comfort him. Don't worry, your serum was wasted by the experimenters more than 30 years ago. Alex breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this, and suddenly the image of Mr. Sinister popped up in his mind again. He also had his serum on him, and he had to find a way to get it back. Leaving it out there all the time would be a disaster. After a moment of distraction, Alex remembered the business, quickly came back to his senses, and turned to look at Nick Fury. Okay, go on. Chapter 360 Bruce Banner. Nick Fury looked at Alex with amusement, shrugged, and continued, recently, a U.S. military scientist used gamma rays to irradiate the super soldier serum and unexpectedly made a breakthrough. Breakthrough? What specific progress? Alex listened to Nick Fury's explanation, feeling a sense of familiarity. After pondering for a long time without any results, he turned to the key question. I don't know either, Nick Fury said with a wry smile and a shake of his head, looking helpless. The U.S. government has imposed confidentiality on us now, and there's a lot we can't know, especially the U.S. military. Okay, it seems I have to take action myself. Alex stood up with a solemn expression, his tone very serious. Tell me where they are. You should know that. Nick Fury raised his hand and pushed Alex back onto the sofa. He glared at Alex and said angrily, don't be impulsive. After a pause, he added nonchalantly, even if they do develop the super soldier serum, it won't pose any threat to you. You should know that. The super soldier serum sounded impressive, but in reality, it was nothing special. Captain America isn't particularly strong among all the Marvel heroes, and he's even a bit weak. His ability to lead the Avengers stems from both his embodying the American spirit and his wisdom and strategy. If it came down to it, Alex could easily take down a whole wave of super soldiers like Captain America. Thinking of this, Alex immediately relaxed and asked boredly, by the way, who is that military scientist? How did he come up with the idea of using gamma rays to irradiate the super soldier serum? His imagination is a bit too wild. He was originally a nuclear physicist, specializing in the research of new high-energy bombs. He was recently transferred to participate in the super soldier project. Nick Fury frowned and tried to recall for a long time, and said uncertainly, his name seems to be Bruce something, but I forgot the details. After Nick Fury finished speaking, he did not notice Alex's sudden change of expression. He took a sip of wine and said to himself, by the way, why are you asking this? You are not going to cause trouble for him. That man's last name is Banner, Bruce Banner. The moment Alex heard Nick say the name Bruce, a light bulb went off in his head. Thinking of Nick's previous introduction, he suddenly realized it, and then he was deeply speechless. Bruce Banner, the Hulk, the Incredible Giant, 3 different names, yet representing the same character, unparalleled strength and endurance, leaps like a rocket, complete invulnerability, and remarkable healing abilities. This is a superhero whose rage can unleash uncontrollable power, surpassing even the god of thunder and the cunning Loki. Bruce Banner, that must be his name. Nick Fury heard Alex's voice and looked at him in surprise, seemingly incredulous. How do you know? Do you know him? I know him, but he doesn't know me. Alex shook his head, his face gloomy. Nick Fury stared at Alex in surprise, then said with certainty, are you hiding something from me? Sorry. Alex's expression grew increasingly bitter, but he refused to give in. Knowing won't do you any good. Just forget it. With that, Alex vanished, taking the can of beer with him. After teleporting away, Alex didn't return to Unsettling Valley or venture into outer space to continue preparing for the asteroid. Instead, he walked the streets of New York, half a can of beer in hand. His mind reeling from images of the Hulk and scenes from the movies. Of all the Marvel superheroes Alex knew, the Hulk was undoubtedly the most unique, the most difficult to control, and the most destructive. The angrier he got, the more powerful he became, a near unstoppable force, as his rage knew no bounds. Most importantly, the Hulk seemed indestructible. In his Hulk form, no one could kill him, not even Bruce Banner in his normal state. In the movies, Bruce Banner attempted suicide several times, only to emerge unharmed. Even if Alex faced the Hulk, he wasn't completely confident he could defeat him. All of Alex's abilities wouldn't offer any advantage against the Hulk. Against a power-heavy opponent like the Hulk, the most effective tactic was strength, much like Iron Man's Hulkbuster armor, which relied solely on sheer power to defeat him. Should I save him? Alex pondered. If Bruce Banner were saved and protected from gamma radiation, the Hulk would likely not appear. However, this wouldn't benefit Alex in any way, it would only reduce a problem for humanity. Without the Hulk, the pressure on mutants would be even greater, and that wasn't what Alex wanted. Let it be. After much deliberation, Alex finally came to a decision, feeling comforted. Besides, without the Hulk, the world would be much less beautiful. As Alex made his choice, 2 men and 1 woman were busy at a military laboratory at the University of California, Berkeley. Something seems to be wrong. I'll go check it out, the blonde young man said after a long inspection. Finding he couldn't connect to the equipment in the isolation room, he addressed the other 2 and walked inside. The remaining man and woman continued to examine the equipment, chatting casually with a certain familiarity, clearly a close relationship. In the isolation room, a blonde young man huddled between 2 gamma-ray emitters, attempting to reconnect the computer. Unfortunately, after a long time, there was no response. Maybe there's something wrong with this circuitry. Bruce, could you come in and take a look? In the computer control room, a tall young man replied, "Okay, I'll be right there." Bruce nodded to the girl beside him, stood up, and headed for the isolation room. As Bruce entered the isolation room, the blonde young man, huddled between the instruments, accidentally bumped into something. A flash of electricity erupted, and all the equipment suddenly activated, including the 2 high-yield gamma-ray emitters. Seeing this, Bruce's face dropped. He rushed to the instruments and pulled the blonde young man out, then turned and rushed to the manual control panel nearby, attempting to halt the operation. Meanwhile, the girl in the computer control room also tried to halt the operation. Unfortunately, neither the girl nor Bruce could stop it. The gamma value is too high, Bruce, it can't be stopped at all. In the computer control room, the girl looked at Bruce in the isolation room with horror on her face and shouted, "Come out quickly! Come out quickly!" Looking at the gamma-ray emitter that had already started to operate, Bruce turned around and wanted to run out of the isolation room, but suddenly found that the blonde young man seemed to be injured, curled up in the corner, facing the gamma-ray emitter. Almost subconsciously, Bruce stood in front of the blonde young man, opened his hands as far as possible, and blocked the gamma-ray emission port with his body. Bruce Banner appeared, and the Hulk was not far away. Hulk, destroy everything. Chapter 361 Daredevil. Alex, unaware that Bruce Banner had already completed the first step of his transformation into the Hulk, was wandering the streets of New York City. He gazed in amazement at a nearby rooftop. His incredible vision allowed him to clearly discern a man squatting there, dressed in a tight red uniform, unmistakably a superhero. This is bizarre. There's no one here until they show up, but then there's a whole bunch, Alex grumbled, his attention fixed on the superhero. Honestly, Alex didn't know many superheroes. Aside from Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man, most of them were characters from the hit Marvel movies. He had no idea who this red-clad superhero was. After a moment of vacant thoughts, Alex suddenly noticed something was amiss around him. He jolted awake, and turned to find himself surrounded by several men. Their menacing expressions made them look anything but ordinary thugs. Alex, naturally, wasn't nervous at all. He looked around at the men with curiosity, almost teasing them. He feigned nervousness and tremblingly asked, You, what do you want? Give me all the money you have." The leader pulled out a dagger, slashing the sharp blade across Alex's neck, glaring at him menacingly. Alex looked at them in panic, shouting, "I have no money, I really do." He reached into his pockets, revealing their emptiness. "Look, there's really nothing. If you don't believe me, I'll cut off one of your arms." Another man groped Alex roughly, his voice trembling. Alex was immediately enraged. Cutting off an arm for no money? That's worse than robbery. Just as Alex was about to take action against the men, he noticed movement from the figure on the rooftop. The man slowly stood up, glanced over, and then leaped from the hundreds-meter-high building. With a clean, quick leap, without a moment's hesitation, he leaped from the building. Skillful and courageous, Alex's expression remained unchanged, but he was secretly astonished. This man didn't look like someone with superpowers. Even Alex wouldn't dare jump like that. In a moment of distraction, the red-clad superhero had already landed on the ground, using 2 short sticks connected by thin wires in his hands like infinitely extended nunchakus. The red-clad superhero's movement was quite a commotion, immediately drawing the attention of several unscrupulous bandits. Turning to look, their faces paled, and they cried out in terror, "Daredevil, Daredevil, this is Hell's Kitchen, Kingpin's territory." The leader nervously clutched a dagger in his right hand, staring at the approaching Daredevil with a fierce expression. He trembled and said, "If you dare to meddle in our business, Kingpin will never let you go." Daredevil snorted coldly, grasping 2 short sticks in each hand, a disdainful smile on his masked face. "Kingpin? He's the one I'm looking for." As soon as he finished speaking, Daredevil took a step forward and, in the blink of an eye, was in front of the leader. He raised his hand and struck him on the head with a short stick. With a loud thud, blood immediately oozed from the leader's forehead. His eyes rolled back, and he fell straight to the ground. Seeing this, the others screamed and fled, wishing their parents hadn't given them an extra pair of legs. Alex remained motionless throughout, his arms folded across his chest, watching the man known as Daredevil calmly as he disciplined the minions, his eyes growing brighter. Observing him closely, Alex realized that Daredevil might be blind, but his perception was astonishing, and his fighting skills were at the pinnacle. Especially with those two short sticks in his hands, they resembled the legendary swordsmanship of a sword master, truly striking with his finger, a mastery of technique. In a matter of moments, the minions collapsed to the ground, wailing. "Your skills are quite good," Alex applauded Daredevil as he withdrew. Daredevil's eyes, hidden beneath his mask, narrowed slightly as he gazed warily at Alex. Despite being blind, his eyes held a terrifying glint. "Who are you?" He hadn't noticed him on the rooftop, but once he landed, and especially after dispatching those minions, Daredevil suddenly realized that the man before him had shown no fear at all, his heartbeat incredibly steady, unlike an ordinary person. A boring person, a mutant. Alex paused briefly before revealing his mutant identity. Daredevil stared at Alex in astonishment, then pondered for a moment before realizing, "I see. You're here to investigate the Kingpin, too, for those mutant children." "What mutant children?" Alex sensed something was wrong, and his aura suddenly surged. He lunged at Daredevil with a terrifying pressure like a tiger. Though Daredevil was an ordinary man, he was a rare fearless individual. Alex's formidable aura had little effect on him. Daredevil put away his short stick neatly, looked up at Alex, and frowned. "You don't know? Then what are you doing in Hell's Kitchen?" "I was really just strolling here." Alex was surprised that Daredevil could ignore his aura, but he didn't want to ask more questions. After replying, he asked again, "Tell me, what's going on with the mutant children?" Daredevil looked at Alex carefully for a long time, and after finally making sure that Alex really knew nothing, he said, "Come with me. Find a quiet place. Come with me." Watching Daredevil walk towards the dark alley on the side, Alex couldn't wait, and grabbed Daredevil, and teleported directly to the top of the building where Daredevil had been squatting before. "It's quiet enough here, tell me. No mistake, one song, one post, one content, one book, one forum." Oh, shit. Though it was only a brief moment, Daredevil felt utterly uncomfortable. He cursed and immediately complained, "So, I hate you superpowered people the most, just like that little bug." Alex wasn't in the mood for his complaints. He interrupted him impatiently, urging, "Stop talking nonsense and get to the point." Daredevil rolled his eyes, leaning against the wall. He spoke uncertainly, "I don't know the details, but I just know they've been kidnapping mutant children lately." He paused, as if thinking. "By now, there must be hundreds." Alex's face turned ashen, his breathing becoming rapid. "Don't worry, they're all fine now," Daredevil said, sensing Alex's change. "They've been locked up, apparently being transported somewhere else. I'm going to kill him now." Alex gritted his teeth, then stood up, his face a fierce expression. Chapter 362 Spider-Man. "Don't be impulsive." Daredevil reached out to grab Alex, shaking his head. "The Kingpin is incredibly powerful. You can't do it alone." Alex scoffed, his face filled with disdain. "There's nothing in this world Alex can't handle." Alex was so confident. Even the cosmic Thanos had been defeated by him, let alone a mere Kingpin. "The Kingpin is more powerful than you can imagine." Daredevil ignored Alex, turning his head to gaze down at the brilliantly lit Hell's Kitchen below, his expression somewhat gloomy. "The Kingpin is the true king of the underworld. He's the source of 40% of all activity in the United States." Alex was horrified. The Kingpin was even more powerful than he'd imagined. But Alex remained unfazed. Alex was absolutely confident he could defeat the Kingpin. With his slaying, this underworld dynasty would be nothing to fear. Not only that, Kingpin is also a master fighter. His strength is terrifying. Daredevil's face paled, his voice trembling as if a thought occurred to him. "Kingpin has many other masters under his command, all as powerful as I am, and quite a few even possess superpowers." Alex was increasingly astonished as he listened, and his desire to meet this underworld king grew even stronger. "If that's the case, then I must meet him." Alex had to proceed with caution when it came to superpowers. As far as Alex knew, superpowers on Earth generally fell into three categories: mutants, and humans, and mutants like the Fantastic Four. The Hulk and Spider-Man, who would appear in the future, also fell into this category. Regardless of which category, Alex had to investigate thoroughly. Hearing Alex's resolute tone, Daredevil shook his head helplessly. After a moment's thought, he said, "In that case, I'll call someone over." More people means more strength. Who? Alex felt he could only summon one person, but he couldn't refuse the kind offer. "A little bug who likes to swing," Daredevil casually replied, then leaped off the building again. His voice could still be heard from midair. "Give me a minute, I'll call him, quick." Alex watched speechlessly as Daredevil vanished into the ground. Standing atop the building, he began searching with his telepathic senses, hoping to find the Kingpin and the place where the mutant children were being held. Unfortunately, after searching for a long time, Alex found nothing. Hell's Kitchen was in such chaos. Not just the people, but the entire space was in disarray, affecting even Alex's telepathic abilities. "This is unbelievable," Alex was astonished, his previously dismissive attitude becoming cautious. Just then, Daredevil returned with someone. Seeing them, Alex couldn't help but exclaim, "Spider-Man!" The person accompanying Daredevil was none other than Peter Parker, Spider-Man, clad in his signature red and blue Spider-Man suit. "You know me, Spider-Man." Peter Parker landed beside Alex on the swing, staring at him with surprise, feeling smug. But then, upon seeing Alex's true face, he too exclaimed in surprise. You know him?" Daredevil couldn't see their expressions, but from their tone, it seemed they knew each other. Alex shook his head subconsciously, looking at Spider-Man with confusion. He could understand knowing Spider-Man, but how could Spider-Man know him? The Times Square battle, that sword-wielding mutant, Daredevil was blind, so he couldn't see Alex's face and, naturally, didn't recognize him. Spider-Man had good eyesight. And although he wasn't there that day, he remembered Alex, the mutant, from watching TV. Daredevil paused for a moment before reacting, letting out an awkward laugh. "So it's you? I'm so nosy. Since we're all here, let's go meet the Underworld King." Alex glanced between Daredevil and Spider-Man, and without further ado, got straight to the point. "Kingpin," Spider-Man said excitedly, twisting his slightly emaciated body. "I've wanted to meet him for a long time, but the chance never came." Daredevil shrugged, reached out from his legs, and pulled out two long sticks. He said casually, "What are we waiting for? Let's go. By the way, do you know where the Kingpin is?" Alex's telepathy had failed to locate the Kingpin, so he could only pin his hopes on Daredevil, figuring he would know. To Alex's surprise, Daredevil simply shook his head. "Sorry, I don't know where he is either." Just as Alex was feeling a little disappointed, Daredevil suddenly added, "But I have a way to make him show up." "What's that?" "Kill him." Alex was startled by the words, then reacted and said helplessly, "Well, that's the only way." Then, Alex, Spider-Man, and Daredevil landed on the ground again, picked up a few street thugs, beat them up, and then followed the thugs' directions to a gang base. Hell's Kitchen is the most chaotic district in New York City, home to the largest number of gangs in the United States, with frequent gang wars. The ultimate boss behind each of these gangs is the Kingpin. After defeating 5 gangs in a row, Alex and his 3 companions were growing bored. After all, they were just ordinary people. Even with guns, they were no match for Daredevil, let alone Spider-Man and Alex. Later, Daredevil and Spider-Man were too lazy to fight, leaving it entirely to Alex to handle the fights. After all, Alex was the easiest to deal with. "Matt, do you think the Kingpin will show up?" Spider-Man, hanging upside down from the wall, looked at Daredevil with a gloomy expression. He glanced at Alex, who was clearing out the 6th gang, and couldn't help but exclaim, "Alex is amazing. Spider-Boy, don't say my name." Daredevil glared at Spider-Man angrily, complaining bitterly. "So what should I call you, DD?" Spider-Man muttered, looking at Daredevil nonchalantly. "Or maybe Matthew, but isn't that a bit too formal?" Daredevil decisively turned away, ignoring Spider-Man. Though they'd only known each other for a few days, Daredevil had already grasped Spider-Man's talkative nature. Being around him was a disaster. Just then, Alex turned and walked out. "Let's go, next one." In a split second, Alex had already dispatched a gang of nearly 100. Daredevil breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing Alex emerge. Just as he was about to turn around, his ears twitched, a faint smile playing on his lips. He slowly said, "No need, he's already on the move. We'll just wait here." Finally, "He's here." "I thought he was going to be a coward." As Daredevil finished speaking, Spider-Man's voice rang out, a hint of impatience. Alex breathed a sigh of relief and casually asked, "How many are there?" Kingpin has quite a few under his command, all quite powerful, and potentially a problem, which is why Alex was paying special attention. 80 or 90, all very strong, Daredevil replied, his brow furrowed. With the arrival of Daredevil and Spider-Man, the age of heroes has arrived. Chapter 363 Jin Bing. Is this fat guy the Kingpin? Alex stared at the leader in astonishment, gasping for air. He looked at Daredevil beside him with a look of disbelief and asked hesitantly, "Is this guy even human?" The Kingpin was incredibly obese, the fattest man Alex had ever seen in his 2 lives. He was only slightly smaller than the Hulk, and even thicker than the Thing. From a distance, he looked like a mountain of flesh. Daredevil smiled wryly and shook his head, his expression gradually becoming serious. His eyes fixed on the other side, his 2 short clubs tightly grasped. Spider-Man chuckled dryly, but couldn't help but exclaim in amazement, "This guy is the strongest human I've ever seen." "Alex, leader of the mutant house, what are you doing in Hell's Kitchen?" Kingpin, a large cigar dangling from his lips, squinted at Alex, his face impassive. Alex frowned slightly, glancing at the group behind Kingpin, finally realizing how difficult Kingpin was. The 80 or 90 people who appeared with the Kingpin were a mix of mutants and mutated humans. Alex even discovered the existence of Inhumans. The Kingpin's ability to recruit these individuals revealed his considerable abilities, and the power behind them was truly formidable. Even more alarming to Alex was their impressive strength, some even surpassing even the X-Men's combatants. Conceived with this in mind, Alex hesitated and quickly telepathically contacted Professor X in the distant Uncanny Valley. Alex stared at the Kingpin with a sullen expression, angrily demanding, "Kingpin, where are those mutant children? I think you've misunderstood." "Alex." Kingpin took a deep drag on his cigar, glanced over at Daredevil beside him, and nonchalantly declared, "There are no mutant children in Hell's Kitchen." Even without telepathically probing Kingpin's thoughts, Alex could clearly hear the perfunctory tone and a hint of impatience in his words. "If you don't accept my toast, you'll be punished." Alex snorted coldly, and 10 steel balls flew out of his body with lightning speed, so fast that even those with poor eyesight would not be able to detect them. In the blink of an eye, the steel balls reached Kingpin and were about to penetrate his chest when a small figure behind him suddenly raised his hand, and an energy barrier appeared in front of Kingpin, blocking all 10 steel balls. "Huh?" Alex paused slightly at the sudden energy barrier in front of Kingpin, not overly surprised. With so many superpowered people behind Kingpin, it was not surprising that one of them could restrain Alex. "In that case, let's do something powerful." Seeing his steel balls blocked, Alex chuckled softly, his eyes narrowed slightly, and 2 red energy beams shot out from his eyes. In an instant, the energy beams focused on the energy barrier in front of Kingpin. The pale blue energy barrier flickered and faltered under the impact of the red energy beams. Alex pressed on, increasing his attack once again. A finger-thick energy beam suddenly blazed, piercing the energy barrier with unstoppable force. Unfortunately, before the beam could penetrate Kingpin, another figure rushed out from behind him, shielding him with his body. To Alex's surprise, the red energy beam struck the figure without a single reaction, as if all the energy had been absorbed by the figure. Yet, Alex couldn't sense any energy from the figure. "Alex, you're provoking the Kingpin. You're declaring war on the Kingpin." Kingpin remained motionless, his expression calm, his words slow and composed, his tone thick with indifference, yet thick with threat. "You talk too much nonsense," Spider-Man blurted out before Alex could speak, his eyes fixed on Kingpin with a strange look. Alex glanced at Spider-Man, about to offer a sarcastic remark, when Daredevil's voice suddenly rang in his ears. "Something's wrong." Daredevil tried to keep his voice low, so only Alex and Spider-Man, standing nearby, could hear. Kingpin must be plotting something. "Everyone, be careful." After saying this, Daredevil didn't fall silent. He continued, "Kingpin's strength isn't just his power and fighting prowess, it's also his brain." Alex ignored Daredevil's solemn explanation. Strength can defeat skill. In the face of absolute power, all ingenuity is futile. Giving Daredevil a reassuring look, Alex flashed and appeared among the metahumans behind Kingpin. A tremendous amount of energy erupted from his body, pounding the group like a tidal wave, accompanied by a powerful explosion. Faced with such terrifying power, some were stunned, annihilated in the explosions, but most chose to flee. Satisfied with his attack, Alex turned to capture the Kingpin, only to find that he had vanished, reappearing 50 meters away, a scornful grin on his portly face. No, Alex shuddered, realizing something was amiss. He immediately prepared to flee, only to discover his teleportation had been restricted once again. Turning, he saw a flashing metal rod in the hands of those who had just fled. Alex's teleportation was being restricted by these flashing rods. Meanwhile, Spider-Man and Daredevil were stunned. Alex's movements were incredibly quick, and they only realized he had reached the Kingpin. But before they could cheer up, the situation took a turn for the worse. Alex was trapped. After a moment of daze, Spider-Man and Daredevil exchanged glances and leaped towards Alex, ready to rescue him. As soon as the two men made a move, 4 others jumped out from the side. These 4 were all very strong. Spider-Man and Daredevil were caught in a dilemma and were in a mess. They had no time to save Alex. After discovering that teleportation was restricted again, Alex was depressed and once again determined to strengthen teleportation. After calming down, Alex looked around calmly, and said sarcastically, "Kingpin, do you think you can trap me like this?" After seeing Kingpin's wisdom, Alex was sure that Kingpin must have a backup plan, so he said so deliberately. "You will see, Alex." Kingpin held a cigar in his mouth, smiled sinisterly, and his eyes flashed with a strange light. Seeing Kingpin smile, Alex tensed up for no reason, and felt a sense of fear. Could it be that he is even more powerful than Thanos? Chapter 364, Solidified Battle. The sudden surge of fear made Alex nervous. With trepidation, he carefully observed the psychics around him, mentally assessing their threat, trying to pinpoint the source of his fear. Unfortunately, after half a minute, Alex found nothing. Forget it, just kill them. Reassuring himself, Alex attacked again. Steel balls and red shock beams shot out simultaneously, indiscriminately targeting the psychics around him. Unexpectedly, as the red shock beams approached the psychics, a spatial rift inexplicably appeared in the void. The rift appeared so abruptly that Alex had no time to adjust. He could only watch helplessly as all the shock beams disappeared into it, causing no harm to the psychics. The steel balls, being slower, managed to avoid the rift with Alex's best efforts, but were ultimately blocked by the spatial barrier, again failing to strike any of the psychics. Seeing this, Alex immediately changed his fighting style, abandoning his pursuit of widespread destruction. His red shock beams converged, then aimed directly at a single individual. Alex's surefire strike missed once again, as a dimensional rift swallowed the beams. "Is this your method?" Alex turned to look at the Kingpin, who was leisurely observing the battle outside. His expression finally shifted, becoming serious. The Kingpin looked at Alex, his massive head shaking slightly, non-committal. Alex finished his words, ignoring the Kingpin. With lightning speed, he rushed towards the psychic wielding a metal rod and delivered a powerful hook. Alex's physical prowess, his combat skills meticulously trained by gladiators, made this seemingly ordinary hook unavoidable, but it was not one the psychic could dodge. As expected, the hook landed on the psychic's forehead, its immense force blinding the psychic and knocking him unconscious. Alex seized the opportunity, stepping forward to escape the encirclement and take Daredevil and Spider-Man with him. It wasn't that Alex was truly frightened, but Spider-Man and Daredevil were already in dire straits under the siege of the 4 men. Unfortunately, Alex was greeted by another superpowered being wielding a metal rod. It turned out there wasn't just one isolation zone surrounding Alex, but rather a series of rings within another. Upon realizing this, Alex turned to glance at the wounded Spider-Man and Daredevil, then, without a second thought, suddenly stretched his arm several meters, piercing through the not-so-tight isolation, grabbing Spider-Man and Daredevil outside and pulling them in. "Huh?" Seeing Alex's sudden display of skill, the previously confident Kingpin let out a startled cry, his eyes flickering. Kingpin had read Alex's detailed profile, but it didn't mention this ability. Alex was unaware of Kingpin's surprise and worry. After pulling Spider-Man and Daredevil to his side, he unleashed his magical powers, healing them while telepathically apologizing. "I'm sorry, I hurt you, Alex. You're amazing," Spider-Man said with a grin, looking at his now recovered arm in amazement, not taking Alex's apology to heart. Daredevil also didn't respond to Alex's apology. He gripped his baton tightly in both hands, warily scanning the surrounding superpowers. He lowered his voice and asked, "Alex, you really can't handle them?" Alex's strength was evident to everyone, and Daredevil simply couldn't believe he would be defeated by the likes of Kingpin. "My offensive capabilities are limited, as you saw." Alex shook his head bitterly and apologized again, I'm sorry, Before Alex could finish, Spider-Man interrupted him, pointing excitedly at Alex's arms. That move just now wasn't working. Alex was startled by this, then realized that besides the steel balls and shock beams, there was this one. With rare exceptions, Alex relied on steel balls and shock beams for most of his battles. It had become a habit. Furthermore, his ability to control his body's limits was relatively recent, and if he hadn't just used it in a desperate situation, Alex wouldn't have even remembered he had it. Alex's realization dawned on him, and he thought of his other ability, magic. Alex had been studying magic for several years, but for a long time, he had rarely used it in combat. On one hand, Alex was powerful and possessed numerous abilities, so he didn't need magic to enhance his abilities. On the other hand, magic was somewhat cumbersome to cast, requiring not only incantations but also specific hand gestures. Some powerful spells even required the inscription of magical circles, further complicating the process. Thinking of this, Alex's face lit up with joy, and he turned to Spider-Man and Daredevil and smiled. I got it. What? Spider-Man and Daredevil stared at Alex in surprise, unsure of what he meant. Alex didn't explain, but suddenly stretched his body, transforming into a giant canvas, completely enveloping Spider-Man and Daredevil, concealing his head and hands. Outside, Kingpin watched Alex and the other two carrying, his expression suddenly changing. He didn't care whether Alex had reached his limit, and barked out orders. Prepare immediately. Absolute Zero, Absolute Zero. This was Kingpin's ultimate move for Alex. At Absolute Zero, space is devoid of energy. Without it, Alex's energy absorption is useless, and he will be completely frozen. Of course, the Absolute Zero Kingpin prepared wasn't truly zero, but only incredibly close. Even so, it was enough to threaten Alex's safety. Unaware of the gift Kingpin had prepared for him, Alex stood astonished by Spider-Man and Daredevil, one hand rapidly constructing a magic circle, the other making various gestures, and spouting obscure incantations. Is this magic? Spider-Man looked at Alex in bewildered surprise, muttering, Of course it is. You founded Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Spider-Man couldn't stop talking, rambling on about his past aspirations. I applied when Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry first started, but unfortunately, I wasn't accepted. Shut up. Daredevil couldn't stand it anymore, and shouted at Spider-Man, unable to stop. Spider-Man looked at Daredevil in surprise, shrugged, and finally shut up obediently. Alright. Just then, Alex suddenly smiled. As he finished speaking, the formation quietly completed, the hand gestures concluded, and a magical power surged from Alex's body. Thunder and lightning struck the earth, and the energy of the entire space began to surge. Outside, Kingpin looked at the nearly completed Absolute Zero, a smug smile playing on his face. But before his smile could fully bloom, something unexpected happened, and Kingpin's face froze. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 365 Tentacle Monster. At the moment Absolute Zero was about to be achieved, the entire battlefield suddenly turned black, like a bottomless abyss. A massive tentacle monster emerged from the darkness, its dozen tentacles, each as thick as a man, strangling all the Esper users before merging into the darkness. The entire process took just 10 seconds, and nearly half of Kingpin's nearly 100 Esper users were killed. Those who survived struggled desperately, struggling to escape. Kingpin was immediately drawn in, but his power was so terrifying that a tentacle wrapped around his waist, and with a single rip, Kingpin tore him in two. Alex, having returned to his normal form, watched the tentacle monster's rampage. While delighted, he suddenly realized he could no longer control the demon. Alex's magic power was depleted, leaving him powerless. The tentacle monster had been summoned by Alex through magic, and ordinary magic was ineffective due to the presence of Kingpin's Esper users, particularly the one who could create special rifts to absorb energy. In desperation, Alex resorted to the dark arts of summoning a powerful demon from an extra-dimensional dimension. Desperate to defeat the Kingpin and his men in one fell swoop, Alex exhausted all his magical power in his desperate attempt to summon a powerful demon. Magic is different from energy. Despite Alex's overflowing energy, he couldn't even cast a single spell, let alone control the powerful tentacle before him. Spider-Man, oblivious to Alex's expression, watched the tentacle easily dispatch the Kingpin and his men. He exclaimed, "Alex, you're truly amazing." He pointed at the enormous tentacle and teased, "That monster is so adorable." Daredevil, though unable to see, immediately detected Alex's erratic heartbeat. "Alex, what's wrong? I can't control this tentacle anymore." Alex continued to try to control the tentacle, using telepathy and other methods, but to no avail. As if to confirm Alex's words, 3 tentacles suddenly charged towards Alex and the others. "Is this the legendary backlash of magic?" Spider-Man said with a chuckle as a thread shot out from his wrist, catching hold of a nearby wall. He grabbed Daredevil with one hand and swung away from the tentacle, dodging it. Seeing the tentacle monster extending its tentacles even further, Alex knew that if he didn't stop it, more people would suffer. He was in no mood to laugh, nor did he avoid the tentacles. Instead, he chose to attack. The steel ball reappeared, flashing a silver light, and the tentacle that reached out was snapped in two mid-air. Alex's spirits lifted, and he was about to continue his efforts when he suddenly realized that the broken tentacle had returned to normal in the blink of an eye and was about to attack again. Elsewhere, Spider-Man and Daredevil also worked together to sever a tentacle, only to find themselves in the same situation as Alex. "What should we do?" Spider-Man touched his head and landed beside Alex, somewhat bewildered. Peter Parker had only recently become Spider-Man, his usual nemesis being street thugs and common criminals. Suddenly confronting such an enemy was a bit of a challenge. Alex silently abandoned the steel balls and fired an energy beam. The bright red energy beam instantly pierced the tentacle, but it had no effect on its movement. "Try there." Spider-Man pointed at the base of the tentacle, where the tentacles converged. Only a small portion had fallen to the ground, while the majority remained below. Alex nodded, and after a long pause, a beam of energy, the thickness of his arm, pierced through his body and shot directly at the base of the tentacle. Something amazing happened. The energy beam pierced the tentacle's base and then shot into the black ground, like a stone dropped into the ocean, without a ripple, disappearing without a trace. The damaged tentacle instantly returned to normal. "Try fire," Kingpin's voice rang out, a little hurried. Alex turned to see Kingpin grappling with several tentacles. A single punch from Kingpin could shatter a tentacle, but the tentacles quickly regenerated, and even after a long fight, the number showed no signs of diminishing. If this continued, Kingpin would surely tire himself to death. "Thank you." After a moment's pause, Alex finally recovered from his shock. He thanked Kingpin and quickly switched to fire. A raging fire quickly erupted around the tentacle monster, its raging flames reaching over 10 meters high. Amidst the incandescent flames, the tentacle monster writhed in agony, its dozens of tentacles flaring even more frantically, no longer targeting only Alex and his men. However, this caused nearby buildings to collapse one after another. Fortunately, the inhabitants of this area had been driven away at the beginning of the battle, otherwise countless lives would have been lost. "It's no use." The flames did injure the tentacle monster, and the excruciating pain drove it even more frantic, but that was all it could do. The damage from the flames was still too much for the tentacle monster to recover from its own damage. Kingpin immediately realized the futility of fire and immediately thought of Absolute Zero. In principle, Absolute Zero could freeze everything. However, this was Kingpin's trump card against Alex, and Kingpin didn't want to reveal it. However, after seeing the tentacle monster grow increasingly violent, its tentacles multiplying, Kingpin, concerned for his own safety, finally spoke up. "Try freezing again." He then explained some of the principles behind Absolute Zero. Alex's eyes lit up after Kingpin's explanation, and he looked at Kingpin in disbelief. "Is this what you're using against me?" "Hurry up," Kingpin urged, not directly answering Alex's question. Alex gave a dry laugh and immediately began to work. Absolute Zero was extremely difficult to perform. Kingpin had to gather dozens of his psychics and use some equipment to pull it off. However, Alex's performance was much easier, relying solely on a specialized method of harnessing energy. However, to everyone's disbelief, at Absolute Zero, the tentacle monster merely slowed down its movements. Nothing else was affected, not even its strength or recovery speed. Just as Alex and his companions were completely helpless, the piercing wail of sirens rang out in the distance, and overhead, the roar of helicopter engines echoed. Teams of armed American soldiers surrounded them from all directions, followed by scores of reporters with flashbulbs. "You two, go ahead." Alex watched the approaching American soldiers. With a wave of his hand, He severed over a dozen tentacles, temporarily neutralizing the threat posed by Spider-Man and Daredevil. Spider-Man and Daredevil hesitated for a moment, gave Alex a deep look, and then turned and left. Neither Spider-Man nor Daredevil wanted to be exposed to the authorities or the public. "Alex, what's going on here?" At that moment, Charles' voice entered Alex's mind, and the X-Men arrived. Chapter 366 Supreme Age. Upon hearing Charles's voice, Alex's face paled, and he quickly sent a message to stop them. "Retreat immediately." American soldiers and media reporters had already appeared, and if Charles and the other X-Men showed up, they would likely cause unnecessary trouble. Alex even changed his appearance, donning a black magic robe and disguising himself as a sorcerer. While Spider-Man and Daredevil escaped, the Kingpin also took the opportunity to flee, leaving Alex alone to face the tentacle monster. Faced with an endless stream of attacks, Alex had no time to explain. He threw the inheritance ring from his thumb and sternly ordered, "Give this ring to Emma and tell her to go to the Sorcerer Supreme immediately." Alex was now helpless against the tentacle monster, relying only on his master, the Ancient One, who called himself the Sorcerer Supreme. Charles hesitated for a moment, but ultimately obeyed Alex's orders and led the hastily assembled X-Men back to Unseen Valley. He gave Alex's ring to Emma, along with Alex's final request. Emma reached for the ring Charles offered her mind racing with what Alex had told her about the Sorcerer Supreme. But she had no clue what was going on. The Sorcerer Supreme's whereabouts were elusive, and Alex had only accidentally received his inheritance deep in the mysterious valley. He had no idea where he could find the Sorcerer Supreme. If Alex was like this, how could Emma be anymore? Vivian and the other two girls, having somehow gotten the news, suddenly woke up from their training and rushed over. Looking at the ring in Emma's hand, they asked in panic, "What happened to Alex?" "Don't worry, it's nothing serious," Emma said soothingly to the three girls. Then, as if remembering something, she raised the ring and looked at them with surprise. "You all studied magic with Alex. Do you know how to find the Supreme Sorcerer?" Vivian looked at each other in bewilderment, then shook her head and explained, "We've only heard Alex talk about the Supreme Sorcerer, but we've never seen him. Alex wants me to find the Supreme Sorcerer now." "What should I do?" Emma pinched the ring, her face filled with disappointment. Just as everyone was lost in thought, Audrey's eyes suddenly lit up with an idea. Alex once said that the Supreme Sorcerer's training grounds were deep in the valley. There might be clues there. The mysterious valley had been thoroughly explored by mutants, and it was impossible for anyone else to exist there. But there was no other way now. They had to try their best. With this in mind, the group quickly reached the depths of the mysterious valley. Emma, staring at the unresponsive ring in her hand, tried calling out the Supreme Sorcerer's name, but there was no response. Sage, temporarily putting aside his duties, followed. Seeing Emma and the other girls fumbling around like headless flies, he suggested, "Try using magic." Sage, possessing a computer-like mind, calculated all the possibilities and concluded that this was the only possible solution. Magic that can communicate, summon, or teleport might work. Upon hearing this, Vivian and the other girls gathered around Emma. After a brief eye contact, Vivian cast the spell. After a brief incantation, an inexplicable magical energy imbued the ring, lingering for a long time. What happened? Frustrated by the ring's lack of response, everyone was filled with disappointment when a deep, unfamiliar voice suddenly echoed. Emma and the others were shaken and turned to see a spirit appearing and disappearing beside them. The spirit was dressed in Taoist robes, his hair and beard white, yet his face was youthful, giving him the air of an immortal. "Supreme Sorcerer," Emma hesitantly greeted. The Taoist was none other than the Supreme Sorcerer, Ancient One, Alex's master. Ancient One smiled gently and nodded, turning to look around. Confused, he asked, "What happened? Where's Alex?" "Alex is being attacked by a giant tentacle monster in New York. The situation is dire and he urgently needs the Supreme Sorcerer's help." After confirming the Supreme Sorcerer's identity, Emma hurriedly explained, her face filled with urgency. "Let me see." Ancient One was slightly startled. He calmly raised his hand and formed a hand seal. A white cloud appeared in the air before him, showing a scene of Hell's Kitchen in New York City. Alex was being attacked by a dozen thick tentacles, struggling to move forward. Seeing the Ancient One's miraculous magic, Emma and the others were too busy marveling at the Ancient One's display of magic to remain completely captivated. Their minds were preoccupied with Alex on the cloud screen, their faces thick with worry. "Shumagorath," The Ancient One's expression suddenly changed upon seeing the massive tentacle monster on the cloud screen, and he instinctively cried out in shock. He spoke so quickly that Emma and the others didn't quite catch it. However, from his expression and tone, they sensed something was amiss and turned to look at him, awaiting his explanation. But the Ancient One had no time to explain. Without a single word, he reached out, snatched the ring from Emma's hand, and placed it on his own. Then, he ducked into the ground, vanishing in an instant. After a long moment of stunned silence, everyone finally came to their senses. Monroe tilted her head back, looking at Emma gravely. "I'm going to New York." As soon as Monroe finished speaking, Vivian Lee and Audrey echoed her words. Emma turned and glared at Charles. Charles had only previously stated that Alex was struggling with a monster, without providing any detailed information about the creature. If it weren't for the Ancient One's magic, Emma wouldn't have known Alex was in such danger. Hearing Monroe's request, Emma nodded in agreement without hesitation, then turned to Sage. "Sage, I'll leave the uncanny valley to you." As Emma spoke, she and Vivian Lee and the other two girls fled, and with the help of a teleporter, they quickly headed for New York. As Emma and the others hurried to New York, the Ancient One had already appeared on the streets, though no one could detect him. In his astral form, the Ancient One defied the laws of physics, possessing the ability to become invisible and pass through objects. So, he burrowed through the earth, reaching New York in less than 2 minutes. Driven by his powerful magical perception, the Ancient One flew swiftly, spies from afar, and saw a massive tentacle monster over 10 meters tall going wild. Its tentacles, as thick as a man, waved, destroying the surrounding roads and buildings. "Thank goodness, it's not Shumagorath." Seeing the frantic tentacle monster, the Ancient One, instead of being startled, breathed a sigh of relief and sped towards it. Meanwhile, Alex, enduring the tentacle monster's relentless attacks, also had to withstand the brunt of the American soldiers' firearms. Though his life wasn't in danger, Alex was filled with a rage, but with nowhere to vent it, he could only destroy the tentacle monster's tentacles again and again. Unaware of Alex's current fury, the Ancient One, upon arriving, saw him frantically ripping off one tentacle before moving on to another. He couldn't help but dissuade him. "Alex, that's no use, Master." Alex paused, his expressionless face finally breaking into a hint of joy. "You're finally here." Marvel may be primarily science fiction, but magic is also a staple, and now it's officially introducing magical elements, along with new characters. Chapter 367, Sealing the Tentacle Monster. "Let me ask you, how did this tentacle monster appear here?" After confirming it wasn't who he thought it was, Ancient One relaxed, taking no time to act. Instead, he began to ask the questions he had been puzzling over. Earth's spacetime was sealed long ago, separated from other dimensions. Creatures from other dimensions like the tentacle monster couldn't possibly exist on Earth. Alex's face was filled with embarrassment. In a moment of distraction, he was sent flying, slamming into the ground more than half a meter deep. Seeing this, Ancient One formed hand seals and muttered a spell. Strange magical power seeped from the black ground beneath the tentacle monster, grabbing it in a flash and dragging it slowly downward. Alex leaped out of the pit and saw the tentacle monster struggling in agony. A bright smile spread across his face, though a hint of fear lingered in his eyes. Just as Alex was watching with joy as the tentacle monster's body sank into the ground, Ancient One suddenly screamed, and as if he had lost all his strength, he fell limply to the ground. Ancient One's strength suddenly weakened, and the tentacle monster took advantage of the situation to counterattack, and its huge body jumped out of the ground again. "Master!" Alex screamed and rushed over. Red energy beams and steel balls quickly protected the fallen Ancient One. Alex also stepped forward and tried to help Ancient One up. However, Ancient One was now a spirit, and Alex's hands went straight through Ancient One's body, as if Ancient One didn't exist at all. "Master, what is this?" Alex stared at Ancient One, who was slowly standing up, in amazement, his face full of disbelief. "This is my soul leaving my body. I'm in spirit form now." The Ancient One coughed and turned to look at the tentacle monster that had re-emerged from the ground. His expression grew grave. "Alex, it looks like we're in trouble." Alex followed the Ancient One's gaze and saw that the tentacle monster seemed different. Not only had its skin changed from black to dark green, but it also had a new eye at the base of its tentacles. Its widened, blood-red pupils were terrifying. "What's going on?" Alex was puzzled. How could the tentacle monster have changed so drastically in such a short time? Shumagorath, he's appeared. The Ancient One sighed with regret, his face filled with bitterness. Alex listened to the Ancient One's syllables, stunned for a moment, unable to react. Trying to repeat himself, he couldn't help but ask, Shumagorath, what is this? Shumagorath, ruler of an extra dimension, leader of the great old ones, with unfathomable power, having devoured hundreds of universes. Alex looked at the Ancient One, bewildered, as if listening to a foreign language. He had no idea what he was talking about. Extra dimensions, great old ones, devouring universes? Without looking at Alex, the Ancient One muttered to himself, Shumagorath has discovered Earth. Earth is no longer sealed. The demons from other dimensions who have long coveted Earth will take action. Unimaginable disasters are about to befall Earth. Master, what are you talking about? Alex subconsciously called out, watching the Ancient One, who was lost in his trance. The voice shook the Ancient One's entire body, and his spirit seemed to be collapsing. That was a close call. The Ancient One regained his spiritual form and looked at Alex with a lingering fear. If it weren't for you, Master would have been doomed this time. Alex looked at the Ancient One in bewilderment, confused once again. Seeing Alex's puzzled expression, the Ancient One smiled bitterly and shook his head, saying quickly, we'll talk about the details later. First, help me send this monster back. Finally, you said I understand, Alex muttered to himself, but his face was full of seriousness. Master, what do you want me to do? In my spiritual form, my magic power is only 1/10 of my real body. This important task will be handed over to you. With a simple explanation, the Ancient One didn't give Alex a chance to think, and then he said another sentence. Next, do as I say. Be sure to concentrate. As soon as he finished speaking, the Ancient One immediately placed his hands on Alex's back, and his voice suddenly became low, and a long and obscure spell burst out of his mouth. Alex was stunned for a moment, then snapped back to his senses after being reminded by the Ancient One. He subconsciously repeated the incantation, following the Ancient One's tone, his hands unconsciously forming hand seals. The long incantation stretched on for nearly 3 minutes. As the final word uttered, Alex felt a surge of unparalleled magical power surge into his body from behind, like a car out of control, plunging through him and crushing everything in its path. Alex felt as if his entire body was about to burst apart. The endless agony that had engulfed Alex suddenly vanished, erupting from between his hands like a galaxy falling from the sky, plunging towards the tentacle monster on the ground. Is this magic? The excruciating pain weakened Alex's nerves, and he didn't react until the magic was released. Before Alex could comprehend the situation, a sudden howl rang out, and he jolted awake. Turning his head, he saw that the tentacle monster seemed to be engulfed, with more than a dozen tentacles curled around its body, unable to move. Furthermore, the tentacle monster's massive body was disappearing into the darkness below at a speed visible to the naked eye. No matter how it struggled, it was futile. Finally, it succeeded. Alex breathed a sigh of relief, a heavy weight finally lifting from his chest. Just as Alex was congratulating himself, the tentacle monster's inexplicably blood-red eyes suddenly gleamed with a fierce glint, glaring at him with a terrifying ferocity. Simultaneously, a furious roar echoed, I'll be back, I will definitely be back. It wasn't a language Alex knew, but in his ears, the meaning was instantly clear. With a final syllable, the tentacle monster finally sank completely beneath the ground. The abyssal blackness of the ground instantly returned to its normal asphalt color, appearing perfectly normal, were it not for the collapsed buildings and damaged roads surrounding it. Master, after dealing with the tentacle monster, Alex turned around and was about to thank Ancient One, but just as he opened his mouth, he found that Ancient One had disappeared. Just as he was wondering, Ancient One's voice rang in his mind, hurry up and clean up, I'll wait for you in the valley. Alex pouted with a depressed look on his face, and just as he was about to slip back to the valley, he found that American soldiers had surrounded him with live ammunition, and it seemed that they were not going to give up. An American general walked up from behind the soldiers, stared at Alex for a moment, and said warily, hello, I am. No nonsense. Alex was too lazy to listen to him, interrupted, and disappeared after saying, this is a demon from an extra dimension, and now I have sent it back, it's that simple. Chapter 368 Extra Dimension. Alex had no idea what extra dimensions meant, merely using the fragments of the Ancient One's earlier remarks to evade the U.S. military. Without further ado, he teleported away, leaving the general and the American soldiers stunned. Returning to the uncanny valley, Alex barely had time to catch his breath when the Ancient One's voice resonated in his mind again, its low, weak tone barely concealed. Alex knew the Ancient One must be injured, so without further consideration, he followed the Ancient One's instructions and teleported out of the uncanny valley. After several teleportations, Alex found himself in a fairyland, reminiscent of the heavens of Eastern mythology. Amidst swirling clouds and mist, a magnificent golden palace loomed. At the end of the sky, a crimson sun rose, its purple glow filtering through the mist, casting a shroud of purple light across the palace. As Alex lost himself in this breathtaking beauty, the Ancient One's voice echoed from the palace, its voice growing increasingly subdued. Alex snapped back to his senses, taking a step forward and running through the mist into the palace. Upon entering, Alex saw the Ancient One sitting cross-legged on the ground, his upper body slightly hunched. His whole body was shrouded in decay, like an old man nearing death, completely devoid of his former sagely presence. "Master, are you alright?" Alex hurried to the Ancient One's side, activating his elixir powers. The Ancient One waved his hand to stop Alex's movements, his face darkening. "It's useless. The power of Shumagorth is not so easily dispelled." Alex didn't give up immediately and continued to activate his elixir powers, but after a while, there was no response. Alex finally believed the Ancient One's words and asked with annoyance, "Master, what exactly is this Shumagorth?" Although the Ancient One had explained it earlier, Alex hadn't understood at all and was still confused. "This world is far, far larger than we imagined." The Ancient One gazed through the temple door at the white clouds outside, his pale face filled with seriousness. "Billions of years ago, the present universe was born from an old universe. Since then, the entire world has been home to many different parallel universes." Huh? Alex looked at the Ancient One in disbelief. Could parallel universes really exist? Our Earth's universe is a single universe. Beyond that, there are pocket universes, extra dimensions, and so on. These different spaces have different laws of physics, and there are also worlds of pure magic, the Ancient One said, turning to look at Alex, his eyes as deep as the sea. Extra dimensions can be thought of as single universes, but they are much smaller. Each extra dimension has a lord, such as Dormammu and Shumagorth. Alex was startled by this and asked uncertainly, "Does this mean that extra dimensions are actually single universes?" Seeing the Ancient One nod with certainty, Alex was stunned again, his mouth twitching. He continued, "And that Shumagorth is the boss of a universe." The Ancient One remained silent, nodding silently. "Dimension Lord, does that mean he's the strongest?" Alex swallowed, the images of Thanos and Adam popping up in his mind. The Ancient One nodded bitterly, and continued to explain, "The lords of extra dimensions are invincible in their own dimensions. No matter how powerful you are in other places, you are definitely no match for them in their dimensions. I'm the boss in my own turf, right?" Alex forced a smile and said to himself, "But he won't be that powerful in our universe, will he? Although not as strong as in their own dimension, he's not much weaker either." The Ancient One ruthlessly cut off Alex's fantasy, looking across the entire universe. There are few who can be their opponents. Alex was completely speechless, staring at the Ancient One blankly, not knowing what to do. Seeing Alex's distraught expression, the Ancient One, not afraid of completely crushing Alex and causing him to lose confidence, began to explain again. "Earth has always been separated from other extra-dimensional dimensions, although they have always sought to invade our universe." The Ancient One coughed, took a breath, and continued, "Now, due to this accident, Earth has been connected to the dimension where Shumagorth resides. Earth is now completely exposed. The demons from other dimensions will surely swarm Earth and use it as a springboard to devour our universe. Master, don't scare me. I know I was wrong." Alex was truly frightened. Alex had never imagined that his careless action would lead to such consequences. If he had known this, Alex would never have used magic. Ancient One coughed several times, shook his head, and said seriously, "Master is not trying to scare you. This is bound to happen. Then what should I do? How about I find someone to help?" Hearing what Ancient One said, Alex panicked even more. "I know some people. They're all very powerful, cosmic level." Alex emphasized this, and the figures of Thanos, Adam, and many others appeared in his mind again, including Observer Otto, Daojian and others. Ancient One rolled his eyes, ignored Alex's words, and said to himself, "All we can do now is to try our best to stop them from invading the Earth." Alex did not speak, because he did not know what to say. Everything he saw and heard today was beyond Alex's cognition. Even though Alex had been a human for 2 lifetimes and had seen many fantasy and science fiction stories, the extra dimensions have only just established a connection with Earth. It won't be easy for those dimensional lords to invade Earth. The Ancient One took a deep breath, his pale face suddenly flushed, and he seemed to have a little more vitality. We still have time. We must strive to improve our own strength, and at the same time, do everything we can to prevent them from invading Earth. Listening to the Ancient One's words, Alex found them meaningless. Looking at the Ancient One with a burdened expression, he asked bluntly, "How do we do this?" "Master, just tell me." "I don't know," Alex said, shaking his head. Alex was completely devastated, his mind racing with thoughts. "Master, isn't there time travel magic? If I travel back in time and stop using it, can I reverse this? What has already happened cannot be changed. Doing so will only make the world worse." The Ancient One sternly rejected Alex's proposal. How about talking to that Shumagorth and asking him not to invade Earth? Alex felt like he was completely crazy, even saying something like that. But to Alex's surprise, the Ancient One considered it carefully for a moment and actually nodded. "That's a solution, maybe it will work." "Master, I was just kidding," Alex screamed, looking at the Ancient One, not believing his ears. Chapter 369 Impact. The Ancient One glared at Alex and said sternly, "Alex, this is not the time to joke." But I was just joking." Alex, startled by the Ancient One's gaze, took a step back. He cautiously looked up at the Ancient One and added, stammering, "I know." The Ancient One gave Alex a strange look before explaining, "But it's a really good idea. Maybe it can actually stop the Shumagorth invasion of Earth." Alex stared at the Ancient One in silence, wondering, has the Master been frightened? Lords of extra-dimensional space like the Shumagorth are naturally arrogant and conceited. If we use them well, we can easily make them give up their invasion of Earth. As he spoke, the Ancient One grew excited, his body shaking. Alex stared at the Ancient One in bewilderment, still unable to understand. Use them well sounded easy, but how exactly would it be done? Idiot. Seeing Alex's bewildered expression, the Ancient One patted Alex's shoulder with a hint of frustration, muttering, "Outsmart them. Exploit their personalities." Alex had never been a clever person, never using his brains for action, but Alex was more than just a brawny brute. Listening to the Ancient One's angry complaints, his mind raced, and soon a clue emerged. But the key is, how do I get to the extra dimension? Alex's worries faded, and he finally began to think properly. The Ancient One looked at Alex in surprise. "Do you have an idea?" Alex nodded and opened his mouth to tell him his plan, but the Ancient One stopped him with a hand. "Don't tell me, they might be listening." "No way, they can hear me here." Alex's serious expression suddenly collapsed, and he looked at the Ancient One in disbelief. Although the extra dimensions have always been separated from Earth, Earth has long had their followers. They are the demons of myth and legend, the Ancient One explained casually, then frowned, a look of resignation on his face as he said, "If I were unharmed, I could send you there, but now I can only seek help from others." Others? Alex's mind was reeling from what he had seen and heard today, but after hearing the Ancient One's words, he had become somewhat immune to them, and his tone wasn't overly surprised. There are many mages on Earth who specialize in dealing with creatures from extra dimensions like the tentacle monsters. The Ancient One explained briefly, gave Alex an address, and then mercilessly expelled him. Alex involuntarily left the palace. Suddenly, his vision darkened. He turned around to see only pitch blackness all around him. A shimmering starlight streamed down from the sky, but there was no trace of the palace in the air. "Another extra dimension," Alex muttered, staring at the empty sky for a moment, then teleported back to the Uncanny Valley. Alex had just returned to Uncanny Valley when he saw Nick Fury sitting in a chair with a sullen expression. The atmosphere was tense. "What's going on?" Alex glanced around. Everyone was present, including several high-ranking members of the House of Mutants. Seeing Alex's appearance, Nick Fury stood up first, turned to Alex, and angrily demanded, "What happened in Hell's Kitchen? Are you involved?" Alex had been in a bad mood all day, and being confronted by Nick Fury like that right after returning only further irritated him. Fighting back his fury, Alex looked up at Nick Fury with a look of disdain. "So what? What's wrong?" Nick Fury slumped down in his chair, his eyes glaring at Alex with a dark expression. 2 hours ago, the US government officially passed a bill to crack down on mutants, at any cost. Alex was slightly startled, but not overly surprised. Given the current relationship between mutants and humans, a formal declaration of war was only a matter of time. Alex was merely surprised that it had come to this so quickly. After the United States, nearly 100 other countries, including Britain, France, China, and Russia, joined in. Seeing Alex's nonchalant expression, Nick Fury shook his head bitterly and added, "Now, mutants have become the enemy of all humanity." Alex was completely stunned. Alex had always said that there was no place for mutants on Earth, but that had been an exaggeration. If mutants truly had to hide in remote areas, humans would be powerless to stop them. But now it was different. The entire Earth had declared war on mutants. Mutants were truly in dire straits. What the hell is going on? Alex paused for a moment, then quickly snapped out of his trance and turned to Nick Fury, demanding, somewhat hysterically, "I deliberately changed my appearance in Hell's Kitchen, taking on a new identity. How could the humans recognize me?" He had barely finished his sentence when, before Nick Fury could offer any explanation, Alex spoke again, his voice hurried and filled with confusion. "Besides, even if the Hell's Kitchen incident involved me, there's no need for the humans to mobilize so many troops, right? Don't forget Kingpin, he remembers you." Nick Fury answered Alex's first question, but he remained silent on the next one. Just as Alex, bewildered and about to ask more, Emma spoke up beside him. "Alex, the humans just want an excuse to attack us. If they really push me to the limit, the worst that can happen is a fight to the death." Hearing Emma's words, Alex froze for a moment, his expression turning cold, and a chilling, murderous aura emanated from him. At this moment, Alex's mind wavered. He no longer wanted to stop the Dimension Lords from invading Earth, and let them ravage the planet. People are selfish, and Alex is no exception. Humanity's actions have completely disillusioned Alex, and he no longer wants to care about Earth's fate. After all, the universe is so vast, Alex can easily take the women on a journey through space. Seeing Alex on the verge of anger, Nick Fury didn't know what to say. He shook his head helplessly and changed the subject. "Alex, what exactly is that monster in Hell's Kitchen, a minion of the Lord of an extra-dimensional dimension?" Hearing Nick Fury's voice, Alex suddenly laughed. The unbridled laughter, accompanied by Alex's clear voice, struck Nick Fury's chest like a hammer. Because of this accident, the two spaces are connected. The Lord of the extra dimension could descend at any moment. Alex paused for a moment, his laughter slowly subsiding. He looked at Nick Fury seriously and added quietly, "Oh, I forgot to mention that the Lord is so powerful that he could wipe out the Earth, or even the entire solar system, with just one finger." Chapter 370 Merlin the Mage. Nick Fury suddenly leaped from his chair, staring at Alex with horror. "Alex, you're kidding, right?" Everyone in the room, not just Nick Fury, was filled with disbelief. They had all seen the world, and the strongest they knew were people like Alex. Wiping out the Earth, and even the solar system, with a single finger was beyond their imagination. You saw that tentacle monster in Hell's Kitchen, too. It was just the weakest of the Lord's pawns. Think about the rest. It might have been an exaggeration, but Alex knew he wasn't lying. Shumagorth was definitely stronger. Nick Fury's dark face paled slightly. He turned to look at Alex, unable to conceal the suspicion in his eyes. "Still don't believe it?" Alex looked at Nick Fury, smiled wryly, and shook his head. "Shumagorth, remember this name. Go back and look for the myths, and you'll find the answer." Alex paused for a moment, then solemnly added, "Finally, let me emphasize that not all myths are false." Nick Fury didn't move, staring at Alex deeply for a moment before slumping back into his chair. "Okay, I believe you, Alex." Taking a deep breath, Nick Fury spoke again. "Alex, can you be more specific?" For the next half hour, Alex poured out everything the Ancient One had told him, pouring out everything in a stream. "Am I really not listening to myth?" Wolverine shook his stiff head and turned to look at Alex, his unshaven face filled with astonishment. Alex spread his hands and said apologetically, "Although I don't want to admit it, I have to say that all of this is true." Alex pointed at everyone present one by one, chuckled and said, "Just like us, we may be another myth in the eyes of humans. Of course, I'm talking about the past, a long time ago. I want to go back and discuss it with them." Nick Fury couldn't sit still anymore and couldn't wait to go back. "Wait, I have something else to say." Alex reached out and grabbed Nick Fury, who turned around to leave. The expression on his face became cold again. "Let's put the matter of humans and mutants aside for now. Now it's time to settle the problem of mutants and humans." "What?" Nick Fury looked at Alex in surprise. "Nick, Why do you think I'm in Hell's Kitchen? Alex snorted coldly. Then, without waiting for Nick Fury to react, he launched into another explanation, his face etched with fury and his teeth gnashing. The Underworld King, Kingpin, has captured hundreds of mutant children. Instantly, every mutant present leaped to their feet, a terrifying aura emanating from them. Wolverine was even more decisive, extending his 2 pairs of adamantium claws. Nick Fury paused for a moment, but without arguing, he nodded and looked at Alex, saying seriously, "Alex, trust me, I'll give you an explanation." With that, Nick Fury left, sweat dripping from his chest, under the fierce gazes of all the mutants. Watching Nick Fury disappear, Alex turned to Charles and said, "Charles, please come." Alex had been worried about the mutant children in Kingpin's clutches, and finally having a moment, he immediately ordered Charles to rescue them. Charles nodded solemnly, and without delay, he gathered his men and prepared to set off immediately. "Be careful of the humans, they won't give up." Alex personally took Charles and the other X-Men to Hell's Kitchen, and before leaving, he reminded them, also, that Kingpin is no simple matter, don't take it lightly. Without staying in New York for long, Alex returned to the unsettling valley in a flash. "Alex, are you going to find that Shumagorath?" Emma and Alex had been together for so long that she could tell what he was thinking at a glance. When she saw Alex return, she immediately rushed over, followed closely by Vivian Lee and the other 2 girls. "We have to go. If he really shows up on Earth, the entire universe will be destroyed." Alex nodded dejectedly, his expression extremely helpless. Emma and the other girls looked at each other, wanting to stop Alex, but unable to find the words. 1,000 words finally coalesced into one, "We'll go with you." Hearing the girls' unanimous words, Alex's heart was filled with gratitude, but he remained silent. "Thank you, but there's no point in you going. You might even be a burden to me." Alex desperately tried to dissuade the girls from their thoughts. Noticing their angry and helpless expressions, Alex smiled and spoke again. "Besides, I'm not leaving right now. I still need some time to prepare. Going now would be a disaster." Alex's words brought a sigh of relief to the girls. Better late than sooner. "Okay, you guys stay home. I'm going to find someone and get ready." Alex consoled the girls again, finally getting down to business. Emma immediately emerged from Alex's embrace, gazing at him suspiciously. "Looking for someone? Who?" Emma's suspicion wasn't her fault. She was worried Alex was using this as a pretext to escape and then go find Shumagorath alone. "Looking for someone? Really?" Alex, seeing through Emma's thoughts, said with a wry smile, "I don't know who it is. My master only gave me an address." "Where?" Upon hearing Emma's question, Vivian and the other girls realized what was happening and glared at Alex with irritation. Alex gave Emma a speechless look and then relayed the address Ancient One had given him. "England." The girls exchanged glances at Alex's address, muttering in unison. They turned to look at Alex, their faces still etched with suspicion. Alex nodded, and before the girls could ask again, he spoke first. "This is the only address I know. I don't know anything else." "Okay, we'll go with you," Emma and the other 3 girls said in unison. Seeing the girls' unwavering determination, Alex nodded obediently. "We'll go together, as long as you're not bored." Alex only had the address, no pictorial memory, and no way to teleport, so he'd have to slowly find the address, which would take some time. Without further ado, Alex enveloped everyone with his telekinesis, instantly transporting them to London, England, known as the Fog City. Alex had spent a significant amount of time in London during World War II, and decades later, the city hadn't changed much. "We can actually look it up online. There's a map," Audrey muttered, realizing she was already in London. Feeling the sticky vapor in the air, Alex sniffed and shook his head, saying, "It's useless. This place won't appear to the public. We'll have to find it ourselves." Having witnessed the celestial palace-like existence of the Ancient One, Alex doubted the person his master had told him to find would be an ordinary person. This address, like the celestial palace, was likely in another dimension. Who is this person, and why is he so mysterious? The damp, chilly air made Monroe feel uncomfortable. She tightened her clothes and complained. "I don't know, but I think it's a mage, a great mage, accepted by the Ancient One." Alex knew this person was no ordinary person, most likely a mage. Returning to her hometown, Vivian Lee seemed melancholic. Upon hearing Alex's words, a person immediately came to mind, blurting out, "Mage Merlin." A captain was about to appear, and with him a divine artifact. Chapter 371 Mage Merlin. Merlin, Alex and the others looked at Vivian Lee in bewilderment. Seeing everyone's genuine confusion, Vivian Lee suddenly became interested and excitedly began to tell everyone about British legends. You all know the legend of King Arthur, right? We all know King Arthur, but who is this Merlin? Alex and the others exchanged glances and nodded. The legend of King Arthur is widely circulated in Britain and around the world. Many people know about the Sword in the Stone and the 12 Knights of the Round Table. However, few are aware that behind King Arthur lies a great wizard, Merlin. Merlin was King Arthur's best friend and mentor. Legend has it that Merlin guided King Arthur to obtain Excalibur, and ultimately to rule England. Vivian Lee excitedly introduced her to Alex, recounting every legend she knew about Merlin, regardless of whether it was true or false. Merlin was born from the union of an incubus and a mortal woman. He possessed mysterious and powerful magical powers, could predict the future through astrology, and even control fate. In the past, Alex would have scoffed at these legends, but after experiencing the thrill of Shumagorath, his attitude began to change. Perhaps they really did exist. Control fate. Alex's face dropped completely at Vivian Lee's last words. As a mage, with a supreme sorcerer as his mentor, Alex was well aware of the power and mystery of mages. Mages possessed many powers unimaginable to ordinary people. Destroying the heavens and earth, reaching for the stars was no problem, but controlling fate was definitely not one of them. Controlling fate, that's a power not even gods possess. Alex's thoughts raced, and he realized he'd been taking things too seriously. Myths and legends might be true, but they were inevitably exaggerated. The thought instantly relaxed Alex, chuckling, if it's really this wizard Merlin, that's quite impressive. Legends suggested he was a powerful wizard, the more powerful the better. Vivian Lee gave him an awkward smile, knowing it was impossible. Alex and his group circled London for much of the day, finally arriving in the suburbs. An ancient castle loomed in the depths of a dense forest. We're not in London anymore, Emma, possessing telepathy and a keen mind, noticed the anomaly immediately. Don't worry, the person I'm looking for is in this castle, Alex chuckled, patting the nervous Emma with a reassuring pat, and then heading into the forest ahead. Having already experienced this once before, Alex wasn't surprised to encounter the same situation again. When he had previously gone to find the Ancient One, he had unknowingly walked into the palace shrouded in mist, having no idea how he'd gotten there, and he hadn't noticed anything unusual. Emma and the other two girls exchanged a glance, then followed Alex closely, their guard still intact, carefully observing their surroundings. Alex said nothing, but his pace gradually quickened. Soon, they emerged from the dense forest. A grayish-white, medieval castle nestled against the hillside. A stream, just over a meter wide, flowed in front of it, and a long bridge spanned the stream, leading directly to the castle. Let's go. Alex gazed deeply at the castle for a moment, then took a deep breath, stepped onto the bridge, and headed towards it. As soon as they stepped onto the bridge, the surrounding scene suddenly changed. The castle and the dense forest vanished. Surrounded by a sea of molten lava. Beneath their feet was a 1-meter square pumice stone, carrying the 4 people drifting through the lava. Illusion. Vivian Lee frowned slightly, a hint of displeasure flickering across her pretty face, though not a trace of surprise or fear. Audrey, beaming, squatted down, reaching out to scoop up a handful of molten lava, exclaiming in amazement, "It's so real, I can even feel the heat." Alex initially thought it was just an illusion, but soon realized something was amiss. He quickly stopped Monroe from reaching out, saying sternly, "Be careful, this isn't just any illusion. An illusion, in simple terms, is a form of mental attack, using powerful willpower to lull the enemy into trance, creating various hallucinations within their consciousness. Typically, illusions are used for control purposes, not for actual offensive purposes." However, the scene before him was clearly amiss. Beneath a sea of molten lava, Alex could sense the flow of magical energy, suggesting an attack could strike at any moment. As expected, as Alex finished his words, a giant, 3-meter-long flaming scorpion leaped from the molten lava, its spray sizzling and burning as it landed on the pumice stone. The sudden appearance of the giant flaming scorpion, especially its long stinger, caused the women to shudder and instinctively duck behind Alex. Alex gently patted Audrey behind him and said with a soothing smile, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." As soon as he finished speaking, the giant flaming scorpion charged, its claws in front and its tail piercing from above, attacking Alex from both sides. Alex snorted coldly, his lips moving slightly as he cast a binding spell. The binding spell, A simple spell, only binds the enemy, its duration determined by the caster's magic power and the strength of the bound. Alex's magic power wasn't particularly high, but neither was the giant flaming scorpion. A single binding spell held it captive for nearly half a minute, enough time for Alex to unleash a powerful spell. Knowing he was looking for a magician, Alex instinctively chose to use magic against the enemy, refusing to use any other abilities. The magic shockwave, a simple yet highly effective offensive spell, was the preferred choice of most mages. The stronger the magic power, the greater the force of the magic shockwave. However, Alex's magic shockwave wasn't directed at the giant flaming scorpion, but at the pumice stone beneath his feet. Though he didn't rely on any other abilities, Alex's energy sensing was a lucky coincidence. He immediately detected the abnormality of the pumice stone beneath his feet, which was the key to breaking the spell. With a loud bang, the pumice stone shattered. With a woman's exclamations, Alex and his companions plunged into the molten lava. At that moment, the surrounding scene shifted again. The sea of molten lava vanished, and the ancient castle and dense forest reappeared before them, right where they had just stepped onto the long bridge. "Welcome, friends from afar. Please come in," a resonant, aged voice echoed from the castle, tinged with a faint smile. Alex and the others exchanged glances and began to walk towards the castle. As they approached, the heavy door swung open from the inside, revealing a deserted occupant. "What mystery?" Monroe curled her lips and muttered with disdain. Alex chuckled and touched Monroe's hair, leading everyone inside, but he muttered in his heart, "I'm afraid this guy is not so easy to talk to." After passing through the corridor and the garden, everyone finally came to the main hall. A white-haired old man sat on the chair in the middle, looking at Alex and his group with a smile on his face. His eyes were as deep as the sea of stars, and I wonder how many secrets he hid. "Alex, I know you." Before Alex could speak, the old man spoke first. "A soul from another world." This sentence shocked Alex. He pointed at the old man with a trembling hand, his face full of disbelief. "Who are you? How do you know?" "You can call me Wizard Merlin. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 372: The Sword in the Stone. Alex's greatest secret was that he came from another world, a secret he had never shared with anyone. The Observer Otto had explored this, consulting many cosmic masters, but he never truly understood it. To prevent Alex from influencing the entire universe, the Observer attacked him several times, even attempting to eliminate him outright. Ultimately, Otto gave up and accepted Alex's existence. For a long time, Alex had considered himself a native of this world. But now, exposed by the words of the old man he had just met, Alex panicked. After a moment, Alex calmed down, realizing that this had no impact on him. "You're quite good, worthy of being a disciple of the Sorcerer Supreme," the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Merlin, observing Alex's quick recovery, smiled in admiration. Alex gave Emma and the other girls a reassuring look, and told them that he would explain it to them in detail when he got back. Then he turned to look at the Wizard Merlin and said respectfully, "I believe Mr. Merlin already knows the purpose of my coming here. I wonder if you can help. Shumagorth is not easy to deal with." Wizard Merlin looked at Alex meaningfully, sighed and said, "With your strength, you are no match for him at all, and you can't even see him." Alex was stunned when he heard this, and then he remembered a problem that he had overlooked. The dimension where Shumagorth is located cannot be the only strong one. The King of Hell is belligerent and the little devil is difficult to deal with. If he encounters other powerful demons at the beginning, his plan may not succeed. Wiping the non-existent sweat from his forehead, Alex regained consciousness and looked anxiously at Mage Merlin. "Mr. Merlin, can't you let me see Shumagorth directly? Shumagorth is the master of the Chaos Dimension." "Meeting him won't be easy," Merlin said calmly, shaking his head. Alex lowered his head in disappointment, his expression downcast. "Then what should we do? Are we just going to watch Shumagorth invade Earth?" "I can't let you see Shumagorth directly, but you can find him yourself," Mage Merlin chuckled, his words sending shockwaves through everyone. "I'll find him myself." Alex stared at Merlin in disbelief. Though arrogant, he was well aware of the gap between himself and the Chaos Dimension. A single tentacle monster had already limited his control. He might even die before he even found Shumagorth. Seeing Alex's terrified expression, the wizard Merlin chuckled. "Young man, have confidence, we're not going. Whoever wants to interfere can do it." Before Alex could say anything, Monroe stepped forward, tightly clasping Alex's right arm with both hands. She glared at the wizard Merlin with anger. "At most, Earth will be completely destroyed, the entire universe will be destroyed, and none of us will escape." Following Monroe, Emma and the other two rushed forward, firmly standing by Alex's side. They cared more about Alex than the safety of Earth or even the entire universe. Even if the world were to end tomorrow, they wouldn't let Alex take any risks. Alex was so moved that tears welled up in his eyes, and he extended his arms to hug the girls. After a moment, Alex released the girls and turned to the wizard Merlin. "Mr. Merlin, just say whatever you want to say." From the moment the wizard Merlin revealed his origins, Alex knew he was much more than just a magician. You have to remember that even the observerado, including some cosmic beings, couldn't discern his origins. A magician, even the greatest on Earth, couldn't possibly do that. "You're very clever, Alex." Mage Merlin gazed at Alex intently for a moment, the smile gradually fading. Alex carefully shielded the women behind him, shrugged, and said casually, "Nothing, just something I've seen and encountered a lot." Mage Merlin smiled indifferently, not pursuing the question further. Instead, he said, "I have a sword called the Sword in the Stone." As he spoke, Mage Merlin slowly raised his hands, and a plain knight's sword appeared in his palms. The sword in the stone was so ordinary, its dull blade seemingly unsharpened. It looked unremarkable. If it weren't for Mage Merlin, Alex and the others wouldn't have believed it was the legendary sword in the stone. Disappointment washed over him once again, but Alex didn't show it, quietly observing Mage Merlin. Only a true knight is worthy of this sword, and only a true warrior can unleash its power. Mage Merlin stared at Alex expressionlessly, his voice low and captivating. Alex frowned slightly, looked up at Mage Merlin, and asked hesitantly, "Mr. Merlin, am I supposed to carry this sword into Shumagorth's path?" Alex truly didn't believe that this sword alone could penetrate the Chaos Dimension and find Shumagorth. A true knight is brave, and faces any threat head-on. Mage Merlin chuckled and nodded, his gaze piercing Alex. Alex didn't shy away from Mage Merlin's gaze. After a long exchange of glances, Alex finally reached out and took the sword of the stone from Mage Merlin. After stroking the blade for a moment, Alex looked up at Master Merlin again. "What should I do, Mr. Merlin?" "You'll understand when you're ready," Master Merlin said mysteriously, a strange smile on his face. "Ready?" Alex looked at Master Merlin in bewilderment, a faint worry rising in his heart. Could this guy be trying to trick me? The more he thought about it, the more he felt something was amiss. Ever since meeting Master Merlin, his every word and action had reeked of that of a charlatan, the kind who deceive and deceive. Doubt and slander are unbecoming of a knight. Alex's thoughts were invisible to others, but Master Merlin could see them clearly. He felt a mixture of amusement and annoyance at the knowledge that Alex thought so of him. Alex was startled by this and looked at Master Merlin with a look of horror. Because of his immense psychic powers, Alex had never been psychically probed, not even by Thanos or Adam. "All right, time to go." The wizard Merlin waved Alex and the others away, not giving them a chance to speak. Alex struggled to resist Merlin's power, but only for a few seconds, only able to utter one final word, "When will you send me to the Chaos Dimension?" With that, Alex reappeared on the streets of London, a look of resignation on his face. Strangely, no one noticed their unusual behavior. Suddenly, Merlin's voice echoed in Alex's mind, "When you understand the power of the sword in the stone, you'll know." Finally, Merlin revealed some information to Alex. The artifact was revealed. Chapter 373 Alex's Secret. Listening to the wizard Merlin's final words, Alex looked down at the sword in the stone, his eyes flickering with confusion. He muttered softly, "What is the power of the sword in the stone?" Alex could never fathom it. It was just an ordinary knight's sword, made of ordinary metal. It wasn't particularly sharp or tough, nor did it possess any magical powers, let alone any other special energy. Despite its reputation, the sword in the stone wasn't even a sword. But would the wizard Merlin have shot at something without a purpose? The answer was clearly not. This sword in the stone must have something special. Unfortunately, Alex hadn't discovered it yet. Shaking his head and giving a wry smile, Alex turned to look behind him at the grim-faced Emma girls. Suddenly remembering something, he looked around awkwardly and hesitantly. "We don't have anything else to do right now. Why don't I go shopping with you? The four Emma girls exchanged glances, their swollen eyes gleaming with brilliance. Shopping is a woman's favorite pastime. Even Emma and the other two girls are no exception, especially with Alex accompanying them. The four girls exchanged glances, reaching a decision. Emma snorted and nodded, still grumbling, "We're fine with shopping, but be honest and don't hide anything." Looking at the four girls' spirits, Alex suddenly felt a surge of regret. He'd heard it was an unspeakable pain for men to go shopping with women, so why had he fallen into this trap, four of them at that? "Okay, I'll do as you say today." After thinking about it, Alex gritted his teeth and agreed. After all, he hadn't really spent enough time with them in all these years. A moment later, the five of them, dressed in trendy casual clothes, were strolling down the streets of England. The one man and four women were all handsome and beautiful, drawing quite a bit of attention. Of course, Alex and the others ignored them, chattering away, their own thoughts connected by Alex's telepathic connection. "Alex, can we not go after Shumagorath?" Vivian Lee, still worried about Shumagorath, was startled by the thought of the danger Alex's trip would entail. Alex reached out and grasped Vivian Lee's delicate, white hand, gently rubbing it. "We have to solve the Shumagorath problem, or else, when he invades Earth, there's nothing we can do. Let someone else go." Monroe chimed in, her delicate face filled with indignation. "I think that wizard Merlin is quite formidable. Why isn't he going?" Alex could see the wizard Merlin's uniqueness, and Emma and the other three girls saw his mysterious and powerful nature as well. Alex's face was filled with bitterness. He shook his head and explained, "Ultimately, this was my fault. If I hadn't summoned the tentacle monster to Earth, the chaos dimension wouldn't have connected, and Shumagorath wouldn't have invaded." Alex sighed again, and after a long pause, he continued, "Everyone takes responsibility for their own actions. I started this, and it's my responsibility to put an end to it." Hearing Alex's explanation, the four Emma girls were speechless. "Okay, let's talk about this later." Seeing the girls' downturn, Alex smiled, raised the sword in the stone, and said self-deprecatingly, "I don't know when I'll finally understand its power." Hearing Alex's slightly self-deprecating words, the four Emma girls suddenly remembered the wizard Merlin's final words. A faint smile crossed their faces. But they secretly thought, "It's best if I never understand." Amidst the laughter, the group entered another store, a men's clothing store. "What are you doing here?" Alex finally realized what was happening after entering, staring at the four women in bewilderment. "You're not going to buy me clothes, are you?" In both his past and present lives, Alex hated buying clothes. He'd wear the same set for years without changing. Of course, Alex had no choice now. What followed was the most agonizing hour of his life. For an entire hour, Alex constantly undressed and dressed, trying on no fewer than 20 outfits. Although it didn't require any physical exertion, Alex felt more exhausted than ever before, even more exhausted than after a battle with Thanos. Finally, Alex's fierce resistance finally freed him. Carrying 3 packages of clothes, Alex followed the 4 women weakly. As his mind wandered, Emma's meaningful voice entered his mind. "Alex, there's something I haven't explained yet." Alex jolted awake, snapping back to reality. He finally made his move. "Okay, I hope you won't be too surprised." Alex gave the 4 women a heads up before beginning to talk about his past life. He applied what he'd learned immediately, bringing out the knowledge of parallel universes imparted by the Ancient One. As for the Marvel movies and comics, Alex pondered over it, but ultimately opted to keep it a secret, fearing it would upset them. After all, no one could accept that they were merely characters in movies and comics. "Alex, have you ever considered going back to your universe?" Audrey's eyes welled up slightly as she listened to Alex's past life story. Alex was stunned by this, then, after a long silence, shook her head and said, "No, that universe has nothing to do with me anymore." As he spoke, Alex threw his arms around the 4 women, saying affectionately, "Here, I'm content with you all. You could go back and take a look. At the very least, give those who hurt you a good lesson." Monroe pouted, waving her arms with a murderous look, as if she were determined to wipe out every last villain. Alex chuckled, but didn't respond. He had long since let go of everything from his past life, and if the wizard Merlin hadn't suddenly mentioned it, he wouldn't have remembered. "We've been walking around for a while. Why don't we get something to eat?" Alex, not wanting to continue the conversation, glanced at the nearby restaurant and immediately suggested. The 4 Emma girls were also quick-witted, readily understanding Alex's thoughts. They nodded in agreement. "Okay, I'll have steak." red wine steak, let's try some British cuisine. As a British woman, Vivien Leigh once again took on the role of ambassador for Britain. Fish and chips, you can't miss it. Hearing fish and chips, Alex suddenly remembered a joke about British cuisine he'd heard in his past life, and burst out laughing. What are you laughing at, Alex? Vivien Leigh turned her head, puzzled, at Alex's laughter. Alex waved his hands repeatedly, not daring to tell the truth. Nothing, there must be a problem. Monroe came in front of Alex, staring at Alex with wide eyes, like a Sherlock Holmes-possessed posture. Alex, tell the truth. As Monroe spoke, Emma and the other two girls turned their heads to look over, with a curious look on their faces. Chapter 374 Brian. Seeing the four women's looks, Alex knew he couldn't fool them. He gave a dry laugh and said helplessly, let's talk about it over dinner. Okay, we'll wait. Vivien Leigh had vaguely sensed something and awkwardly pulled Audrey along, heading towards the restaurant ahead. As soon as they sat down and hadn't had time to order, Monroe couldn't wait to come up to them. Alex, can you tell me now? What were you laughing at just now? Alex glanced at Vivien Leigh, who looked calm, and hesitated. Noticing Alex's look, Vivien rolled her eyes and playfully said, if you have something to say, just say it. What am I doing? Hearing this, Alex instantly relaxed. Pointing to a dish on the menu, he turned to Monroe and said with a grin, you'll find out in a minute. Look up at the stars. Monroe subconsciously read the name Alex pointed to, a hint of longing in her eyes. What a beautiful name. I can't help myself. Hearing Monroe's words, Alex couldn't help but burst out laughing again. Fortunately, Alex had set up a soundproofing array around his seat beforehand, otherwise his laughter would have made him look like a fool. What are you laughing at again? Even Emma's curiosity was piqued, and she looked at Alex in surprise. Alex glanced at Vivien again and found that she was not angry, so he continued, okay, it's just a joke. After that, without waiting for the girls to ask, Alex took the initiative to say, Europeans ate British food and asked the waiter in a British restaurant, is there any food in the world that is more unpalatable than this? The waiter proudly replied, yes, Finnish food. What? Emma and Monroe were confused when they heard it, and turned to look at Audrey and Vivien Leigh. They both looked at Alex with a helpless look on their faces. Alex glanced at Audrey and Vivien Leigh, then turned to look at Emma and Monroe, shrugged and said speechlessly, Finnish food is recognized as the most unpalatable in Europe, no doubt about it, huh? Emma and Monroe suddenly realized, turned to look at Audrey and Vivien Leigh, and the two girls' faces were full of complaints. Emma and Monroe, both Americans, couldn't understand the reputation of Finnish food. Is it really that bad? You absolutely wouldn't want to try it. Monroe, Vivien and Audrey exclaimed in unison, their beautiful faces filled with fear. Watching the two women's expressions change, Monroe couldn't help but wince. Okay, I understand. After a few moments of banter, the food arrived, except for the last dish, the stargazing. It's a feast indeed. The grand finale. Monroe quickly scanned the table, potatoes and fried fish. Her appetite immediately waned, and she began to look forward to the stargazing. Alex, looking at Monroe, was eagerly anticipating her expression as she watched the stargazing. It was sure to be quite something. Vivien noticed the smile on Alex's face and glared at him fiercely. She tried to explain, but Audrey beside her stopped her. Audrey reached out, grabbed Vivien, and turned to Alex, a sly smile on her face. Actually, I'm looking forward to stargazing, too. Though Audrey had never been to England, she was European and had heard of British cuisine. Even if she hadn't tried stargazing, she could tell from Alex's expression that it definitely lived up to its name. A moment later, the waiter arrived with a final dish, stargazing. Monroe froze at the sight of the waiter's plate. Emma was stunned, and even Audrey, who had been prepared for it, looked stunned. Only Vivien managed to hold it together, though, as she held her hand to her forehead, it was clear she couldn't handle such a feast. Alex's eyes flickered between the four women's faces, his heart awash with joy. He remembered that in his previous life, Alex had first learned about stargazing online. A single photo had made him burst into laughter. The strips of fried fish stuck into the potato pancakes, especially their innocent eyes, were truly hilarious. Later, Alex even went to England to see it for himself. It had to be said that the real thing was even better than the picture, and Alex burst out laughing right there. As a result, Alex was kicked out of the shop. After a while, the four Monroe girls finally came to their senses and burst into laughter. Even Vivien Leigh was no exception, though her smile was somewhat awkward. Who on earth came up with this? It's genius, Monroe said weakly, clutching her stomach as she collapsed into Alex's arms. What's even more amazing is the name looking up at the stars. I'm really impressed. As Alex and his group laughed unrestrainedly, a young couple sat chatting at a table next to them. A copy of Looking Up at the Stars was also on the table. The young girl chattered incessantly, while the boy had a strange expression on his face, occasionally glancing at Alex and the others. "Brian, I'm talking to you," the girl said, then realized the boy wasn't listening. Annoyed, she followed his gaze and spotted Alex and the other four. Brian, the boy, woke up with a start and looked at the girl in panic. "Sorry, sister, what did you just say? You've grown up and know how to like girls," the girl said, quizzically, looking at Brian. "But seriously, these girls are really pretty, only slightly less so than your sister and me." Brian waved his hands, frantically explaining, "Sister, it's not what you think. It's them, I know. I know, sister won't stop you," the girl interrupted him with a wave, grinning. "If there's a girl you like, go for it. Sister totally supports you." "No," Brian tried to explain, but the girl didn't give him a chance. She grabbed him and began to teach him the secrets of courting girls. On the other side, Alex and his friends laughed for a long time and began to try British food, which was a rare opportunity. "Alex, there's something wrong with that guy." While they were eating, Vivian Lee suddenly gestured to Alex, raised her chin slightly and pointed to the next table, which was Brian and his sister. Alex turned his head to look over, and didn't find anything unusual at first. When he was about to ask Vivian Lee, he suddenly found that there was a magical fluctuation on Brian's body, which was very secretive and almost flashed by. If Alex hadn't been lucky, he wouldn't have noticed it. "Hey, there's magic," Alex said in surprise, muttering to himself. Britain is indeed the hometown of wizards. A wizard Merlin, a Harry Potter, the two most famous wizards in history are from Britain. Alex just said this, but suddenly found that Brian's mind was also shaken, and after a moment of silence, he suddenly realized, this guy can hear our voices. Chapter 375 Fans. Because of the soundproofing formation, Alex and Emma dared to be so unscrupulous and laugh wildly. Hearing Alex's telepathic words suddenly, the girls were awe-stunned. They looked at Alex in surprise, and their eyes unconsciously swept to the neighboring table. The boy was very young, and looked like he had just graduated from high school. He was young and had the pride and frivolity of a young man. Facing his sister's constant nagging, the boy dealt with it seriously, but from the glances he kept giving, it could be seen that he was not listening at all. "It seems that he has magic." Vivian Lee was the most serious magic practitioner among the girls. After Alex, she also noticed the abnormal magic fluctuations in the boy. Alex looked at Vivian in surprise, having never expected her to detect Brian's magic. He nodded in amazement and said, "Indeed, it's not that he has magical powers, it's probably a magical item he has. That's unusual. He can even break your soundproofing." Emma's eyes flicked over Brian nonchalantly. If she hadn't been worried about making a noise, she would have wanted to use telepathy to search him. Alex chuckled and nodded, swallowing a French fry. He said casually, "I think it's unusual too. Let's find a place to talk later." He couldn't help but sigh, thinking to himself, this England is truly magical. Because of Brian's presence, Alex and the others' lunch suddenly became quiet. They mostly exchanged jokes, and the delicious food on the table was quickly devoured. It might look a little hard to swallow, but it's actually quite good. Monroe stood up from her chair, rubbing her slightly swollen breasts in an ungainly manner. She looked at the plate of stargazing, which still had a bit of potato bottom left, and said with a mixture of laughter and tears. Alex and the others were left with a mixture of laughter and tears, but after thinking it over, they nodded again. "By the way, aren't we waiting for him?" Seeing Brian still seated before leaving, Vivian Lee looked at Alex with some surprise. "Let's go shopping first. When he's free, we'll look for him." Alex turned to look at Brian, who was fidgeting in the restaurant, a faint smile on his face. "Besides, I think even if we don't look for him, he'll come looking for us." Inside the restaurant, Brian grew anxious when he noticed Alex and the others were about to leave. Looking across at his sister, who couldn't stop talking, Brian couldn't help but urge, "Sister, aren't you going to work this afternoon?" His sister paused, glanced at her wrist, shook her head, and said, "It's still early." Just as she finished speaking, she suddenly realized something and turned to see that the group around her had already left. A knowing smile suddenly spread across her face. "Okay, let's go." After asking the waiter to pay the bill, The sister stood up with a smile on her face, eagerly grabbing Brian. "Brian, come on, I believe in you." With that, she pushed her brother out, heading in the direction Alex and the others had left. Brian was at a loss for words, opening his mouth to explain, but when he turned around, his sister gave him another encouraging gesture and a sweet smile. "It's a misunderstanding, so be it." Brian noticed Alex and the others turning the corner, and without bothering to explain, he waved to his sister and quickly chased after them. Brian was very fast, running halfway across the street in a few seconds, but as he turned the corner, he lost sight of Alex and the others. "No way." Brian slowed down and carefully searched several nearby shops, but still couldn't find Alex and the others. Just as he was wondering, a clear female voice suddenly rang out in Brian's ears, with a smile that made him laugh. "Are you looking for us, little boy?" Brian was shocked and turned his head to see Alex and the other four standing behind him, smiling. A sudden thought struck Brian, and he quickly introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Brian Braddock, and I'm..." At this point, Brian was speechless, realizing he was no longer on the street. Surrounding him was a barren meadow dotted with scattered shrubs, and in the distance, a rolling hillside. This is..." Brian was completely stunned, looking around in bewilderment. "Tell me, who are you, and why are you following us?" Monroe seemed to enjoy Brian's antics. With a faint seriousness and a stern face, she spoke again, threateningly. "If you don't tell me clearly, we'll kill you." Brian seemed frightened by Monroe's words, and froze. "Monroe, stop scaring him." Vivian Lee, looking a little reluctant, quickly spoke to him, moving towards Brian to offer some comfort. Vivian had just taken a step when Brian suddenly snapped out of his trance and, with a look of excitement on his face, threw himself at Alex's side, shouting, "Captain America, you're Captain America's comrade, I know you." Emma and the others were stunned, and Alex was completely bewildered. After World War II, due to the manipulations of Observer Otto, all memory of Alex was wiped from Earth. With the exception of a few individuals like Sebastian Shaw and the Mandarin, no one remembered Alex. Even Nick Fury, Vivian, and the others had to be reassured by Alex. Now, in a foreign land, someone suddenly appeared and claimed to know that he was Captain America's comrade. The shock to Alex was like a nuclear bomb exploding in his head, his mind going blank. After a long moment, Alex finally regained his composure. He looked at Brian with a complicated expression and hesitantly asked, "Do you know who I am?" "I know, Alex. Captain America's best friend, a member of the Howling Commandos, code-named Phantom." Brian recounted the details, his eyes full of tears. His body trembled with excitement when he mentioned Captain America. Alex completely believed Brian's words. It was obvious that Brian was a huge fan of Captain America, even knowing his original codename, which Alex had rarely used back then. "How do you know all this?" Alex asked again, bewildered. Brian quickly squatted down and pulled out a small wooden box from his backpack. Inside was a collection of old photos. The first one was a group photo of the Howling Commandos from their infancy. "What is this?" Alex trembled as he held out his hands, tears welling in his eyes. Brian carefully pulled out the photos one by one. Each one was a Howling Commando, some individual and some group, nearly 30 in total. "My grandfather fought in World War II, responsible for logistics for the Howling Commandos," Brian said proudly as he watched Alex flip through the photos. While Alex's attention was completely absorbed in the photos, Emma and the other three girls simultaneously discovered an amulet at the bottom of the small wooden box, emitting a faint magical vibration. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.